I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is also a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. I want to give a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We have a big show tonight. We are going to start off with a panel. I want to show you guys what we're going to discuss tonight, so you're not in the dark. We have quite a bit to get into before I go on break this weekend. Tonight, we are discussing AOC responds. This is in response to what is happening with the Democratic Party. It is crazy out there in these streets. We're going to get into all of that. We're also going to discuss Trump threatens Gaza. Is it real? What does it mean? What is he trying to do? We'll get into that. We're also going to discuss Boston mayor testifies in Congress. There was a big testimony there, ladies and gentlemen, from all of the mayors that are part of the sanctuary cities. We're going to dive into that testimony. Of course, as you can tell, we do have the Black media panel tonight. They're going to speak out. And we're also going to discuss veteran job loss, which is kind of under the radar. And we're going to get into that story as well. But first and foremost, we do want to dive into the panel. Let's go ahead and bring everyone in one by one. Let's welcome them all. All right. Hello. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. So let's go ahead in order. Let's start with Torren.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Sabby. My name is Torren Walker. I am a writer. I'm a journalist. I'm a content creator. I'm also a digital filmmaker. So that's pretty much what I do. I tell Black stories, and I tell the stories of marginalized people.
Awesome. And Garland.
Garland Nixon. I'm a YouTube host, radio host, actually retired law enforcement. I was in, I've done a lot of radio going back and forth with conservatives, and I was on Fox News for about 10 years.
And Jamal.
Jamal Thomas. I am a YouTuber, content creator at this point, former radio host, I suppose, maybe future radio host. But Jamal Thomas Morning Show, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on YouTube currently.
Yes, and Jamal gets up very early.
Unfortunately, yes.
Hey, I applaud it. But we want to get things started off today because everyone obviously on this panel has experience in the media. All of them are independent now, but even at some point, and we'll start with you, Torren, we want to talk about people's experiences that they've had. And this conversation kind of comes from the firing of Joy Reid. There are a number of people that, feel some type of way about it. There seems to be a pattern that is happening with MSNBC, but I don't think this is just an issue with MSNBC. And I've gave my opinion about Joy Reid. But Torren, I want to start with you. A lot of people may not be aware, but Torren was the first guest that I had on this show. And I remember, Torren, in the beginning, you were explaining about the experience that you had working with like the Huffington Post. So I want to hear a little bit about that. if you could explain to people why you decided to, exit that and go into independent media.
Yeah, well, my professional background started at the Huffington Post. I was filing stories in the midst of everything that was going on during the new protest movement. The George Floyd, the Mike Browns. All those stories that were happening when, unfortunately, it seemed like there was another black brother getting killed by the police like every other week. So I was filing those stories, and while it was good professionally at first, what I ran up against in mainstream media was the fact that there's a difference between telling a story and the way a story is framed, and having to move that story through an editorial process when you're dealing with people who may not understand the culture and they may not understand the background of why things happen the way they happen. So while, of course, when you're working in mainstream media, or really if you're working in professional media in general, you're going to deal with an editorial process. But I think sometimes people don't understand that sometimes the editorial process can affect the way a story is portrayed, even no matter what information you present. So that was dealing with a lot of that. And then when I left the Huffington Post, I freelanced around for a lot of different outlets for Fusion, a couple of things on Vice, and I ran up against that same thing because my background and my beat was telling black stories from black perspectives. That doesn't mean that you're being biased from one or the other, but I'm just giving you the stories from people who may not normally be heard. So what I dealt with constantly was people who may not know the culture, people who may not understand the nuance, ironically, or the context of a culture. So I ended up having to deal with that all the time. It's like, was the story relevant? How come you're talking about these people? Why aren't you talking about other people? So I eventually just got tired of it, and I just left it. Eventually, we had a parting of the ways, and I built my own thing, so to speak.
Awesome. Let's go to Garland here. So Garland, I know that you used to work with Fox News for quite some time. What was your experience? I'm curious. You got to be honest, Garland. What was your experience like working for Fox News during that time? And is there any difference that you see when you look at Fox News today?
Well, I don't look at Fox News today, so I don't see a difference. But in reality, a big part of it was my journey, because when I started with Fox, I was a Democrat, and they used to say Garland Nixon, Democratic strategist. And what I realized in the past is, the mainstream media wants to set up a particular paradigm. Here's the Democrat with the mainstream Democrat position. Here's a Republican with the mainstream Republican position, and let the two go at it. But I was a Democrat. I didn't know, and then the whole Bernie thing happened, and I started to change and drift away from the Democratic Party. And eventually I was on Fox, national, and I started doing a TV show it was in New York and Philly and Jersey, in that area, right? It was called Chasing News. And at a point, what's interesting has happened is it got to a point where I started hosting the show. They were like, "Oh yeah, we like you." I was kind of, I guess, moving up. That's whatever you want to call it. And when the host was not, if he was off, I would host the show. And I started reading from a teleprompter. I lasted 60 days and quit. Once I started reading from a teleprompter, it was like, hey, as long as they were like, "What do you think, Garland?" Boom, and I could tell them. But when it got to the point I'm reading from a teleprompter, I'm like, that's not me. Then I'm interviewing someone, and the questions are given to me. I'm going to ask them the following questions. I read the questions. I'm like, oh, hell no, I'm supposed to ask that, And so it just got to a point where it wasn't me, and I just walked away. And then, of course, I went back, and I always did some radio, and I went back all into my radio and stuff like that. So my eye changed. And then once I actually started reading from a teleprompter, I just couldn't do it. I can't say things that I don't believe.
We're going to come back around to that. Jamal, your journey is a little bit different, because I remember watching you like way before I started the show, your YouTube channel, and this was during the Bernie days. And I thought your show was a little bit different. Like, you were still obviously, supporting Bernie and things like that, but I felt like you gave a deeper analysis than what I saw from some of the other, channels that were supporting Bernie during that time. But then you went to work for Sputnik Radio. And please explain to everybody what happened there. Because for those who don't know, Jamal used to host a show with Sputnik called Fault Lines. It was an awesome show. That was probably like my favorite show to be a part of. Like on a regular, like, you guys had great conversations over there, and everybody wasn't from the same political ideology, but all three of you could come together and just have like a genuine conversation. What happened with your journey?
Oh God, man. I feel like I'm fortunate than these two, because I really didn't get pushed. Like, when I was doing my own channel, it was my own channel. I talked about, if I wanted to talk about Star Trek, I talk about Star Trek. If I want to talk about politics, I talk about politics. The radio station radicalized me, weirdly enough. And what I mean by that is, on my own channel, I used to focus mostly on domestic politics. And by the time I got to the radio station, God, man, we did international politics. That's what we did. Like, we were doing media sources all around the world. One day we were talking about Sudan, another day we were talking about Pakistan, another day we're talking about Nord Stream pipeline. And it was at the station where I realized how extreme U.S. policy is. And it radicalized me. I just couldn't, like, my mom instilled certain values in me, right? And war is bad, killing is bad, knocking over governments is bad. All of these things are bad. And then when you really dig into it and you're looking at this stuff from an international standpoint, you realize how extreme and over the top, in addition to the propaganda associated with the policy in order to justify the previous, is. I was outraged. I was like, I can't believe this is the way the world works. It's the way the world works, right? I didn't get the sense of being pushed. I mean, for all intents and purposes, their thing was, we want you to get the story right. And like, get it right, I just mean you need to report it straight, report it honest. It doesn't need to align with mainstream media. Give it the way you perceive it. And you have people who are on the right, on the left, you have communists, you have libertarians, you have everybody, in between where you guys have fights with. And that stuff on some level informs your point of view. There's some points of view where you're like, you're absolutely right, I'm wrong. There are other points of view where you get into a drag out fight on air over whatever that particular issue is. So it's a weird journey. I mean, I started off as a software engineer and then started off in media. I look at the world through this kind of engineering logic and chess logic. And somewhere along the way, it just kind of fell ass backwards into a media job for my YouTube channel. So it's a weird journey. It's a weird journey, to put it mildly. But thank you. I appreciate your compliment on that.
And what happened with fault lines? Because the government got involved there, didn't they?
Yes. So yes. So the government did an end run around the First Amendment. And what they ended up doing was, they said initially going after banks. And they were doing this for conservatives too, by the way, where they were going after banks. The people are lying if they're saying they weren't doing it. They were debanking people. I mean, they were doing it in Canada, they were doing it in the UK. But what they ended up doing was starting to put a pressure on the show. And some of that had to do with audits. Some of it had to do with going so far as to say, okay, we're going to go after the parent companies. And by going after the parent companies, you can basically strangulation. Yeah, you can strangulate. That sounds wrong. You can choke to death, choke the hell out of the show by basically killing it up top, and you kill everything that goes downstream, and it makes it illegal. The company tried to stay open. A boss told us beforehand, he was like, look, they would have to come in and rip the cord out the socket before we effectively call it a day. And ultimately, it was boiled down to, the lawyers came in one day and says, you will go to jail. Stop. In which case, stopped on a dime. So it's a weird experience to have the federal government target you. Like, you're saying something so subversive that they need to shut you down. That is mind-blowing, right? And this kind of informs my opinion about the Joy Reid thing. Joy Reid was one of those people, as opposed to media solidarity, where everybody's like, all right, we may have different points of view, but all of us are media, we're going to defend each other because all of us are media. If one goes down, everybody goes down. That is not the way MSNBC looked at that. MSNBC thought it was fine. They were dancing on our graves.
Well,
Joy Reid.
Hold on to that, because we'll get to the Joy Reid part. So hold that thought for a second. I want to pivot back to what Garland said here about being given questions. And I'll go back to you, Torren, and then back to Garland. This experience, and this is something I think a lot of us have criticized corporate media about, because I don't believe that these commentators are choosing their own questions. I don't believe that they're not being told by producers what they can and cannot talk about. And I'm curious with you, Torren, even when you were writing, the experiences that you had, you said there were certain stories that you wanted to cover, but you were getting that pushback about, well, they didn't feel that it was important. Was there ever a time when you were told what you needed to discuss?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
I was never told what to discuss, but what happened to me a couple of times was that I had back and forth with editors where it was like we want to edit this in a certain way till the voice you're trying to reach in the story and the voice you're trying to give in the story is not the voice we're going to print out. I'll give you an example. In the aftermath of the Charleston massacre, when Dylan Ruth came in there and killed all those black people in the church, I wrote a story called "He's Not Heavy, He's Not Evil, He's Your Creation." And I was basically saying that Dylan Roof is not an isolated case. What he is the product of 400 years of anti-blackness filtered in through the modern day, given access to weaponry and given access to unfettered access to the internet, where this would eventually take place, if not this way, and another way. And when I put that story out, or when I submitted it, I had to deal with a lot of editorial pushback about, well, do you think you want to say this way? Or how about if we go back and say it this way? Why don't you do this and why don't you do that? I don't want to get into the full details of it, but that's what happens a lot of the time. So they don't directly come and tell you that, we want you to say this. There's a way to edit a story and there's a way to create a narrative that says something completely different than what you're trying to convey. So I never had anybody tell me directly, don't do this, but I do know that it does go on. I know that a lot of people who are in mainstream media, they're really not journalists. They're really just news readers, and they're given what to say and they just repeat it. And as long as they have a job, they're fine. And they'll do that as long as it's comfortable to them. And the minute they get fired, then all of a sudden they want to come and be independent. But that's a whole other conversation. We'll get into that later.
Thank you, Torren. Garland, so going back to what you said about you were given questions. Could you expand on that just a little bit more? Because when I think of people like Simone Sanders, for example, and when we saw like during the 2024 presidential election, it was very obvious that there's bias on both sides, right? Like there's bias on Fox News towards Donald Trump. There's bias on MSNBC and CNN towards Kamala Harris, and then previously Joe Biden. Do you think that even when we looked at some of like those the third party candidates, remember it was like a hush thing, like don't talk about it, or because of what was happening in Gaza, they felt like they had to mention it at least because they knew some people were leaning that way. So they're like, oh, well, if you support Jill Stein, then that's just a vote for Donald Trump, that type of thing. When you say that you were given questions or you were told like what to do, how far does that go?
Sure. Now, keep in mind that when I'm talking about more of a, I don't want to call it a local show, but the ones that wasn't the national stuff. And I'm interviewing people and stuff. It was like written out. You know what I mean? Like the questions and stuff were written out that I would either have to memorize them, read them off of a teleprompter or something like that. Now, I'll say this. When you get to the national stuff, the host of the show will read out like the intros to a segment, right? Like Marco Rubio today said blah, 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 and this and that and that. And you can tell they're doing the intro, right? But then when they get to the actual kind of talking, editorializing part of the show, then, it's not written out the same way. I'll say this, though. I can recall one time, I've had this happen more than once. So when I was, let's say I'm, going to do a show in New York, right? I'm on the train and they would email me, this is what we're going to talk about. Blockade, this, blah, blah, blah. Send me your talking points. And I had twice. One time I was going to New York and send me your talking points. I sent him my talking points. And I knew I was green then, though. I didn't know. Send him my talking points. I get to New York. I get a call. Yeah, we'll probably do things a little different today. We're not going to need you. But, look, the limo's there that was supposed to take me to the station. Just use it all evening and do whatever you want in Manhattan. It's all yours and, have a fun, whatever, right? Really? And so what they would do is if they didn't use you, they just give you the limo for the rest of the evening and say, use it for whatever you wanted. Who cares? Right? Like that's the consolation prize. But what I learned was after a while, I learned just put something for the talking points that you think they'll approve. And then when you get on the air, talk about whatever you want. So it appeared to me that the talking points must have went upstairs to somebody or went to, the people in charge, and they looked at the talking points. Whoa, no, this ain't going to go down. But I did find that it didn't matter what I put on the talking points. Nobody ever said, once I went on the air and said whatever I wanted to say, hey, that's not the same as your talking points. But they were so there is some editorial approval going on, but it appeared that I could kind of say what I wanted, you know.
That's it.
I was surprised. Yeah, I would say Fox, as far as being, you know, just not the host, but as being the person that's on the show where they're talking to you and asking you stuff and all. It wasn't. But then again, at that time, I was a Democrat. I was in the Democratic Party, and as I got to the Bernie stuff, I drifted further away from being a Democrat, so I didn't fit in the mold as well. But still, they never messed with me. They let me do what I wanted to do. I will say that.
That's interesting. And that brings me to the Joy Reid piece. Because for those who are not aware, Bree was going to be on this panel tonight, but she wasn't able to come. She had another appointment. But her article was published in Current Affairs, this recent article about Joy Reid. And I want you guys to see something. I mentioned this before on the show, but for those who have not seen it, Bree also wrote it. People need to hear this part right here. For example, I suspect that Reid was willing to risk covering Palestine because, like many Black Americans, myself included, she sees Palestinian apartheid reflected in her own experience as a minority in a settler colonial country, and the stakes are clear. I applaud her for taking that risk. But I was also told by a person with knowledge that a booker who used to find guests for Reid's show said that after they suggested me as a guest, Reid no longer wanted to work with them. And there's another part I want to come to after this. So long story short, basically, Brianna Joy Gray was suggested as a guest on Joy Reid's show. I believe this was during the Bernie 2020 campaign. And apparently the booker who wanted to bring her on was removed after that. So it was very clear there was some type of blacklist that was going on. And keep in mind, people, that obviously Bernie was running through the Democratic Party, but he wasn't the type of Democrat I think that corporate media wanted. I want to pass it to you, Jamal, your thoughts about that and this whole idea of blacklist. And I think you and Garland are close to DC.
Yeah,
I am. Yeah, I'm right outside.
Yeah, I used to live in DC for the last 5 years. Yeah.
There seems to be like this DC elite media bubble as well. Go ahead, Jamal.
So I had Ted Rall on my show, and Ted Rall, I didn't know this, but Ted Rall used to, at one point, was trying to get a job at MSNBC. And they effectively told him, look, you can't criticize Democrats. And Ted Rall was like, how can you do the job like that? And by the same token, you know, he pointed out that Rachel Maddow, he said she's the biggest fraud on the planet, that she's every bit as much of a lefty as him and I are. And yet she plays that particular role on MSNBC. You can look at Ed Schultz. If you remember Ed Schultz saying that he believed he got fired from MSNBC for trying to cover Bernie Sanders. They kept telling him, don't cover Sanders, don't cover Sanders. He kept trying, in which case they got rid of him. Krista Ball, I remember she said she did a segment on Hillary Clinton, where she was critical of Hillary Clinton, and they effectively gave her a reminder after the fact saying, yeah, let's have this person check your stories. Effectively, that's a no-no. We don't like that you did that. And Cenk Uygur, if you remember, Cenk Uygur had a show on MSNBC, and he pointed out that they brought him into the room saying, hey, you're being too tough on Democrats. Like, there's obviously a slant in regards to what they can and they cannot necessarily cover. Gaza was one of those issues. And the reason why I say Gaza was one of those issues, I don't know if it was specifically related to Israel or if it was specifically related to criticism of the Democratic Party. I don't know which one it is. It could be both. Because if you remember, part of the criticism towards Democrats were Genocide Joe, Chiller Kamala. You guys are backing a genocide. How are you backing a genocide and expect people to vote for you in good faith? And that was a criticism. You guys are backing a genocide. You guys are backing a genocide. And so if you're on MSNBC and when they wouldn't even bring a Palestinian on the DNC convention stage, and you are Joy and Reid or somebody else, and you're bringing up this issue of Gaza, okay, well, obviously Joe Biden is in office. Any criticism of the Israel issue is by definition a criticism of the Biden administration, considering 70 to 80% of the money that Israel is using for that genocide was coming from Joe Biden. And this was something that Kamala Harris didn't want to count. This was something that she even told her people, don't talk to people if they're bringing this up. And so you can imagine if you are a network where criticism of the Democratic Party is effectively off the table in real terms. It is indirect criticism to bring up the issue of Israel and Gaza. Now, I don't know if it's indirect criticism of Democrats or if it's the fact that it's Israel and Gaza, because look, I can tell you, all of us in media were under some level of pressure when October 7th happened, where it was kind of like we were told, look, play this straight. Now, the rub is Israel went so far after the first week where it was like, okay, just do the news. Doing the news is effectively being critical at that point. But that was our network. Who knows what was going on at MSNBC? And I believe Brianna Joy Gray is right. It was probably either the criticism of Israel, the indirect criticism of the Democratic Party that effectively ran afoul. Good on Joy and Reid for covering the issue in spite of the threat. But it was a threat to her job. And Lord knows they got rid of her.
Well, her ratings did decrease too. When I looked at the ratings, her ratings did drop. Now, granted, Al Sharpton's show was lower than hers.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand how he got to stay there, but she had to go. And I know she did give some credit, but I felt like her criticism about Israel was mild compared to, others, those of us that went hard in the paint. I felt like hers was relatively mild, but this isn't the first time they tried to remove her. They tried to remove her a couple of years ago, and it was actually Sean Hannity who came in to kind of rescue her and save the day and say, no, keep her there.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of people I don't think know about that, but they tried to get rid of her a couple years ago. And there was turmoil back then at MSNBC, and Sean Hannity was the one who contacted them and said, don't get rid of Joy Reid. And she sent him a thank you. There's a whole article about this. I kid you not. If you Google it, like, she thanked him for letting her basically, keep her job.
That is hilarious.
I know. It's just like, I want to pass to you, Torren, as well. I want to get your take on this about what Bree said, that she was basically, in so many words, blacklisted. And I'm assuming because she was working with the Bernie campaign.
Well, I was nodding my head while you were speaking because I have been down this road before myself. Word has gotten back to me a couple of times that I've been suggested to be on a couple of shows. And then when people started checking some of the things I talk about, they'd be like, no, don't bring him on. I've had that happen a couple of times. So this is nothing surprising. But I think people need to understand this. When you are a Black journalist and you're in the mainstream, there's sort of like this unofficial understanding that you're only going to talk about certain issues. You're going to talk about Black civil rights. You're going to talk about electoral politics in sort of like a roundabout way, but it has to be somewhat connected to the Democratic Party. And you have to talk about things that happen in world events, but on a very, very surface level. What happened over the past year and a half with Gaza and Israel is that we're seeing the combination of digital media, meeting mainstream media, again, for the second time in the last 10 years, meeting the narrative and meeting people's consciences. You can get into the thing about the influence that Israel and AIPAC and the lobby and what they have with mainstream media in the United States. But no matter how much influence you have, nothing's going to trump the fact that you have a father holding his dead child who's been blown apart in his arms in the midst of rubble. There's no way to spin that. There's no way to get around that. And I don't care where you are, if you have any kind of compassion for human beings, you're going to want to reach out to those people and figure out what's going on. If you're a journalist, it behooves you and it's incumbent on you to try to get a backstory on why is this happening? What's going on with this? It's not just the things happening on October 7th. What's the backstory that goes into this? And for the people who create narratives in the United States in mainstream media, that's very scary. And when you are a Black person who's stepping out of that box they put you in as a Black journalist and you go into these stories, then automatically you become a target. I think that's what happened with Brianna. I think that's what happened with Joy to a degree. But there's also another thing that's going on as well. Fortunately, what happens a lot of times when some of our people get into these positions, they automatically get obsessed with being the only one in the room. You hear people talk about, so if we're going to have this conversation, we got to have it. A lot of our people who get into these spaces get into this thing where like, well, I'm here. I got to protect my position, and I'm not going to let anything come in here that's going to threaten me. So if you're making me look bad, you're making us all look bad. So I'm not going to have you on my show. Now, what happens, like I said earlier, is that everybody gets their wake-up call. Paul Mooney said it in a different way, but I'm not going to do it out of respect for your show. But a lot of times people get into these spaces and they forget that your first duty is to be a journalist, and your first duty as a journalist is to the truth. Even at sometimes at the expense of your position, sometimes at the expense of your comfortability. People forget that, and they think because they have an expense account and they're on TV every day, they think that automatically gives them a mandate. You still have to be able to inform the public. It's still on you to be able to take care of the people who want to be informed by you. And if you step outside of that, like I said, you run the risk of either your bosses coming down on you, but if you try to go along to get along, you end up losing the credibility that you built up with the people who respect you. So I think what happens is we have to figure out, do you want to be a journalist? Are you a journalist who is black? Or are you just somebody there who's holding a seat? Because if you're one or the other, you have to pick a side. You're going to have to decide, are you a journalist? Are you dedicated to telling the truth? Are you dedicated to informing people? Or what are you there for?
Ooh, that's deep there, Torren. And this brings up an experience I had when I was in undergrad. And at that time, I was just a sophomore, but I was starting to apply for internships for broadcast journalism. We were going to different like local news stations. This is local news, guys. So just keep in mind, guys, I wasn't in like going to like MSNBC or nothing like that, but these are like local news stations at the time. There was a woman who told me, and I kid you not, this will never get out of my head. There was a woman who told me, Black woman, that said, if you want to be a TV anchor, she said, you need to try to get to a news station, a local news station that doesn't already have a Black female anchor. And I was like, what? Like, I wasn't even, keep in mind the age at that time. Like, I wasn't even 21 years old. And she told me that, and she was dead serious because she said they don't want another you. If they already have a Black female anchor, they don't want another one. And I think that was like a big like reality check for me. Is like, holy smokes, is she serious? And then I started paying attention. Like when I watched like the local news and I was like, oh my God, I think she's right. Like they may have other people out in the field, like the field reporters, but when it came to the anchors, I think she had a point there. And that leads me to this part here that Bree said as well. Let me make sure. Give me just a second, because I think StreamYard added some new thing. So now it's like we got to do, I don't know why they made things more complicated than they already were. But now it's like if we're sharing something, we have to click on the scene thing. So I don't know. Can people see this? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, good. Because I think last time people couldn't see it. So something else that Bree said in this article here, and this gets to the part about Tiffany Cross. She said that, I'm going to highlight this. This is crazy. For the crime of being critical of the Democratic Party, encouraging Democrats to embrace the progressive issues popular among their base, like Medicare for all, I was told by party apparatus that I would never work in town again. Tiffany Cross likened me to Dave Chappelle character Clayton Bigsby, a white supremacist who's Black, and said the quiet part out loud. Attention, younger people hoping to pursue a career in political communications. Calm work requires thinking, strategy, foresight, always uplifting the candidate. And then she went on to say, Tiffany is right. Career advancement in the Washington political scene and on corporate news requires always uplifting the candidate. And Garland, I want to bring you back in here. What is going on with this news political scene in DC? Like, this is crazy.
Well, it's reality. It's not news. I've been saying this for a while. Look, and Joy Reid knew the game. I mean, look, I don't feel sorry for her. She played the game until it didn't work for her anymore. You know what I mean? I've heard Joyce Reid say things that made me want to snatch the TV off the wall and heave it out the window. I mean, and I was like, she's disgusting. And now all of a sudden, people like that kill me. They're willing to do all the dirt for the system. And then when it don't work for them, they turn Black again all of a sudden. Right? Anybody to the left, oh, she attacked her. You're Bernie. Oh, you're a Russian bot. You know, everything she could, whatever the man told her, the establishment, the system, when they said attack, dog, attack, she would bite your ankles in half. And then all of a sudden, when suddenly things don't work out for her, oh, well, I'm Black again. Oh, Black people, come around. Well, please help me up. No, sorry, Joy. You just, your time, your usefulness is gone. Trump won. Here's what I think. Trump won. And now I remember when Joe Scarborough had this thing called Scarborough Country. right? And that was when the Bush administration was in, and he was a conservative. And then Obama won, and he wasn't a conservative anymore. He was still Joe Scarborough, but it wasn't Scarborough country. And off he goes to claim it's a conservative. Now he's on the left, right? So you know why he wasn't a conservative anymore? Because they'd have fired him. As soon as Obama came in, if you remember, MSNBC, a bunch of these MSNBC had conservatives. They had both. Obama comes in, they do a shift, and they bring in all they're Democrat. Trump won. They're going to get rid of some of these Joy Reid tap dancers who are tap dancing for the Democratic Party and bring somebody in to tap dance for the Republican Party and now say, well, you know, perhaps we were a little hasty being mean to Trump. They're playing the game. They're trying to get the ratings and save themselves. And so I don't feel sorry for Joy Reid. She got what she got. She played the game until it didn't work for her anymore. And now we're supposed to sit around and talk about how she's been done wrong because she was black. But we see people talk about the system. You think, I put it like that. They wrote, oh, you had to uplift the candidate, the Democratic candidate. Joy Reid could have wrote that. She knew the game. She played it every day. Till it didn't work for her anymore. When it didn't work for her now, she's crying and whining. And, you know, yes, there's a genocide. Well, if you don't stand up against the genocide, there's no excuse for that. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you stood up against genocide. Well, you shouldn't really be celebrating like you're supposed to get some kind of an award for standing against genocide. That is the minimum requirement of a human being. So just my thoughts.
All right.
I take care of my kids.
Yeah.
I'll pass it to Jamal, because Jamal, another thing I noticed too, which I think frustrated me during Bernie 2020, is that I knew what the platform was really about because I was watching independent media, because I was watching people like you, and et cetera. But what was frustrating was watching corporate media lie about that platform and say they want to take your health care away. And they would never bring on someone like you who got it right, obviously, and was supporting that, the candidate at that time. They did the best that they could to try to smear him over and over. And then fast forward to 2024, we saw the same thing happening when we all knew that Joe Biden did not have it in him to have another presidential term. And Simone Sanders sat there on MSNBC and she said, Joe Biden is the candidate. There will be no primary. He's the candidate. That's it. Does everybody remember that? So it's just playing the game, just going along with it. What was that like for you, Jamal, especially being close in that area?
I have accepted that you can, integrity is expensive. You could be, you can either be right or you could be rich. It's one or the other, right? No, I define my job as getting it right. And some of the stuff was just obvious. And mainstream media, like Joe Biden one is a really good example. If you remember, mainstream media came out, Jake Tapper specifically shouted down somebody who came on the show who pointed out that Joe Biden cognitively was not altogether there. It's like the man is literally not altogether there. He is wilting before our eyes. He's like an ice cream cone in the sun. And Jake Tapper shouts the guy down. Jake Tapper turns around and writes the book on how the media, or how, let's say, the political space hid Joe Biden's cognitive difficulties. Think about that. In one sense, he's shouting down somebody for bringing it up, and then later on writes the book on how it was hid. Like, I get the sense the media is more so narrative control. It's less about what's true. It's more about the narrative that is being pushed. And whatever that narrative is, the goal is to reinforce the narrative. You get Fox News and MSNBC that ends up being the boundaries of the conversation, with CNN being the bellwether between these two groups. It doesn't mean that Fox News and MSNBC is right. It just means that these are the boundaries of the conversation. Social media has created this kind of new device, though, where that stuff gets bifurcated, or more than bifurcated. I mean, it gets split into all different directions where people have all sorts of points of view, where this kind of typical endpoints no longer they don't work anymore. And so they seem out of touch. And so Fox News, it obviously has a bias towards Republicans. MSNBC obviously has a bias towards Democrats. And you get people disbelieving all of it now. A lot of it just because they have found what media pushes to be just false. Unprovoked war of aggression, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I mean, you can go down the list of things that they effectively just made up and just ran with. And at the point where the public realizes, okay, these people are lying to us, they lose credibility. And then they blame social media. They blame Joe Rogan. They blame Donald Trump. They blame everything else with the exception of the fact that they're just getting it wrong and often wrong. It's frustrating, obviously. I felt like I was, oftentimes when I was doing my job, I felt like I was in an alternate reality where it's like, okay, either I'm insane because all of these people are repeating the same thing that I strongly suspect is wrong. But no, I'm not insane. I tend to get it right more often than not. It's frustrating.
So how do people feel about those that left corporate media and they're now on this independent media podcast train? I'm going back to you, Torren, in particular. If you look at someone like Don Lemon, or you look at, Joy Reid already has a podcast on YouTube. She started it last year. Roland Martin, who sometimes people forget, also came from corporate media and then made that journey over to YouTube and started his own thing or whatever. These people are worrisome to me because I still notice, even though they're no longer a part of those entities, they still have the corporate media talking points. They still carry water for the Democratic Party, even when they're wrong. I want to get your take about that trend that's now happening, Torren, as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to start by saying, as somebody who has been a frequent guest on Roland's show, I haven't been since November, but what happens, I think, is sometimes people get this idea that, like I said earlier, you forget that you're a journalist. And I'm going to speak specifically about a lot of black journalists, like you said. I think a lot of black journalists forget that they're journalists, and they end up becoming PR people for like political parties, mostly for the Democratic Party. If you're a journalist, it's your job to be objective about everybody. You know what I mean? It's your job to ask questions about everybody, whether they're Republican, whether they're Democratic, whether they're independent. Your job is to be curious, and your job is to ask questions. And I saw a lot of stuff that was leading up into the election that just passed last year, where people who I used to respect, who I thought were journalists, were so deep in the bag for the Democrats and so deep in the bag for Kamala, to the point where they were literally crashing out and screaming at people for asking simple questions about their candidate. And I'm like, aren't you a journalist? Why are you acting like this? Now, I'm kind of getting off track a little bit, but I'm saying that to say this. Like I said earlier, every black person who gets too far out of pocket in this society and think they're above everything, eventually your wake-up call is coming, and your coming to Jesus meeting is coming. And what we're seeing now is a lot of people who thought they were safe and secure. But as the brother Garland said, if the mainstream media can only use you for while you're expedient, and when it's time for you to leave, they're going to give you the boot. Like what happened to my sister Melissa Harris Perry. She was sort of like the canary in the coal mine for a lot of this stuff. I used to love watching Melissa Harris Perry's show, and then when it seemed like America was starting to turn more conservative, they wanted to chase that dollar. I mean, the networks wanted to chase that dollar. When they saw that conservative dollar coming in on the tail end of Obama, it's like, okay, now you got to get all you black journalists, y'all got to go find something to do because you're going to be out of here. I think what we're seeing now is the same thing happening. But the difference now is the people who are moving into independent media now are not there by choice. They're there by necessity. And what's happening is they're trying to go out here and compete with people who have been on the ground, like myself, and other people who have been out there for 10 and 12 years putting in work, and now they're trying to come home. Like you said, Don Lemon. Don Lemon's walking around like a 20-year-old YouTube, like a TikToker now with a microphone, right, trying to get people to listen to him on the street and everything. You know what I mean? I see other people who are trying to come back and do this podcast thing, where it's like they wouldn't be caught dead in the podcast studio until they got their pink slip and told them to go get your stuff. And so it's just kind of funny seeing that. But the thing of it is, if you have a track record of shooting down people who are on the mainstream and in the grassroots, and then you try to come back out here to the grassroots and try to say, hey, I'm out here for y'all and everything, it's not going to work for you. You might get people from your group and your social circle to be with you, but we see how you move. You know, it's like, I can't believe what you say because I see how you act. So they're going to have a hard road to go trying to come back home and try to do that. It's not going to work. Number one, I think some of them are so inured with the way the mainstream works that they can't find an authentic voice in the streets. And they don't even know how to move because nobody trusts you. So I just feel like it's fascinating. But you're going to see more of that. And like the brother Garland said before, a lot of these people didn't give a damn about doing independent media until they got the boot. Now they're trying to come out here like, hey, my brother, my sister, and everything. There's a movie I tell people to see that's actually funny. It's from the 70s with Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. I forgot which one it was, but it's like something happens to him, and they try to go to see a black politician, and the politician's got on the whole three-piece suit, and then he talks to his secretary. He says, "Are there politicians to see me? No, they're constituents." And he goes in the back, and he comes out with a dashiki on, and he's got a picture of Nixon on the wall. He flips it. There's a Malcolm X picture. And then they started playing African drums. That's what they look like to me. It's like, brothers, my brothers, how are you doing? So it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out in the next year. I don't think it's going to work for them.
Interesting there. Garland, Angela Rye, I think is another one. I know you talked to me about it briefly. The big blowback that she got was when Jill Stein and Butch Ware came onto the Breakfast Club, and she hasn't been on at that time. She hadn't been on there as a co-host for quite some time, and all of a sudden, it was obvious that she was sent there with a specific assignment, and that was to destroy any hopes of third party, etc. That speaks to what Torren is saying here about instead of doing journalism, it's like you're just a PR person. I want to hear your take about that.
Well,
I believe she wasn't she also let go?
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, she was a stupid one, to be quite frank, because she didn't even try to hide it. I mean, I'm sure they were angry at her saying, yeah, we sent you there to attack them, but you got to be discreet. You got to be subtle. She just came there with like a mean look on her face, like she wanted to swing at him. The only thing she didn't do is like throw things at him, right? But she came there, very violently and angrily, and you could see the game. So I think the reason she got fired was not because she didn't attack him, but because she wasn't subtle and she wasn't able to do it in a way that was so obvious. She like really screwed them over because they didn't, they want the game played, but they want it played in a way where, and you can see it sometimes. You can watch the good hosts and they'll play, and it's with a smile. And there's, well, don't you think maybe we could blah, blah, blah. And they kind of nudge and they're kind of subtle about it. And those are the most dangerous, that's the most dangerous thing. The subtle ones. Hey, the ones that just come out there throwing elbows, that's easy to see. And Angela Rye, she was not good at being, they didn't want an attack dog. You know what I mean? They wanted kind of like a ninja. Kind of like somebody that was going to come in there in a black suit and you wouldn't know that they did the attack, and you walk away and your throat's been cut. You don't even know who did it or why, right? But yeah, it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. It's something I've been commenting on for a while, and by saying this, and that is, it's not news. If I can turn on MSNBC or CNN and I know who they're going to attack, I know who's good, who's bad. Then I go to Fox, I know who's good. Then I go to Newsmax or Newsmax or OAN, right? And I know who's good and who's bad, right? I'm like looking at my country saying our country has some fundamental problems. When I can't turn on the news and just see, I want to see a forest fire. Don't we just have forest fires anymore? Why is it if it's a forest fire, then if it's a Republican or a Democrat, it's not the forest fire, it's the story. It's what state is it in and which political party is in charge of the state, so you can attack them and blame them for the forest fire. Everything has a political tinge to it, which means we don't have media anymore. We just have outlets for the various parties. And I think what's happening, and Torren hit it, and that is there's those of us, I've been about 3 years, who enjoy what we do. And we just get out here because we got something to say. And it's like, well, it didn't work that good on mainstream media. So I can get on, as Jamal said earlier, hey, I can get on here and say anything I want, and there'll be somebody that likes it. And if not, there won't be that many people, but I get to say it. And one of the things we have to be careful of now is this: the Don Lemons and his ilk. People who didn't make it in either didn't make it in the mainstream media. Let me be a little conspiracy theorist here. Also, I think that the mainstream wants to infiltrate this sphere. And they want to get people in here and give the appearance that they're alternative media. And we know who they are. There's some people I look at it and I'm like, you look like you're sitting in your bedroom or something with some curtains in the back, right? But when I listen to what you're saying, I might as well be listening to CNN. So there's people out here that want to create the appearance of alternative media, but what you're hearing out of their mouth is it's the same old thing. And I feel it's the mainstream trying to infiltrate here and get over here and take all of our people, but it ain't going to work, because the people that are in the chat right now, the people that are watching our shows, they're there for the realness of it, and they know when it ain't real. Intuitively, they know what's real and what's not. That's why they left them, and that's the good thing about it.
Those are really good points there, Garland. I wonder about that too, them trying to infiltrate like this space. And speaking of infiltration, this is another thing that has come up over the past, I think, couple of months. There has also been scrutiny towards corporate media taking a liking to certain people that do not have experience with in the political space, but giving them a lot of room to speak. So, for example, I'm sure you guys have seen it. Charlemagne the God and Stephen A. Smith. I'm passing it to you, Jamal Thomas. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, and everybody noticed this, all of a sudden, when it started in the 2024 presidential election, everybody wants to know all these, whether it's MSNBC, CNN, even Fox News, etc., The View, they want to, let's bring on Charlemagne the God and Stephen A. Smith and get their political opinion. Stephen A. Smith is an amazing, sports commentator. I watched him for years on First Take, ESPN, etc. I do agree with some of his takes about where the Democrats have messed up. I don't agree with all of his takes, but he's not a political commentator. But they're bringing on people like Stephen A. and Charlemagne the God for political commentary. Jamal.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that. I mean, Charlemagne seemed to get a huge amount of presence in the 2024 election. Initially, he was screaming at Joe Biden, saying that Joe Biden, he doesn't automatically get my vote, all this other stuff. And then when Kamala Harris came on, all of a sudden he was a lock. And for Kamala Harris, it was very bizarre. It was very strange turnover. I would have loved somebody to ask him, what's the difference politically? Like, what policy-wise, what's the difference? Kamala Harris made a choice not to unmoor herself to Joe Biden. So how are you so in the tank for one, but not in the tank for the other? Yeah, I think you have a point. Oh man, I get the sense that it's Black voices that are critical of Democrats, but are still kind of Democrats, if that makes sense. Like Charlemagne the God is a Democrat for all intents and purposes. He was in the tank for Joe Biden. Stephen A. Smith is not a Republican by any stretch of the imagination. He just has criticism of the party and the way that the party currently operates. And I agree with you. There's some stuff I agree with him, but when he put a knife in the View, I agreed with him. But there are other stuff that he would say what I would not necessarily go with. I don't know what's going on with this. I mean, because I do see it. I just don't necessarily know the motivation behind propping up voices like this. I mean, Charlemagne has started getting a lot of head play in general, especially in the political space. I don't know what's going on with it. Maybe because he has political commentary every random blue moon, or he would bring on political figures. Like he brought on Joe Biden, he brought on Harris, he brought on Jill Stein, even though, that was somewhat of an ambush. So every random blue moon, he does have a tendency to bring on some political figures. But I agree with you. These aren't necessarily political commentators. They just have a point of view. I don't know. I don't know the motivation behind it, raising those voices. I guess that's my point. That's my honest answer with it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people don't know this, but back in the day, I'm not going to say how long ago, but back in the day, Charlemagne was my best friend's neighbor.
Was he?
That's back when I was an undergrad, when he was still on the radio in Columbia, South Carolina.
That's so random.
Old school. Yep, that's back in the day. So this was never really.
Did he do political commentary at all during the radio days when he was in South Carolina?
No, this was more like hip hop, sometimes like pop culture. And then I still remember when he got the call, when he said that he was going to move to New York to go do the Wendy Williams radio show. So this is when Wendy Williams was still on the radio right before she got the talk show.
Right.
So his move from Columbia, South Carolina was to go work with Wendy Williams on the radio show. And then I guess like when she got the talk show offer, that's when he went over to the Breakfast Club and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this goes way back. Like I know like that's way back when he was on like local radio a long time ago. But again, was not into like politics in this way, shape or form. But that also brings me to the final question I want to ask everybody, which is about independent media, because another thing, we have these call-ins once a week. And one of the things that's been brought to my attention about particularly Black media is people are starting to notice, at least my viewers are starting to notice, that they want to know why they're not seeing more of the Black media voices on independent media. The people who already exist, like people like yourself, they want to know why they're not seeing you guys on like a TYT, why they're not seeing you guys on like a Breaking Points. And I want to get your perspective about that. We'll go to Torren and we'll make our way around.
Oh, it's a very simple question because they have their designated black people that they bring on and they stick in that and they stay in those circles. And if you're outside of that circle, they don't really understand you or they don't want to hear from you. There's also the fact that we have to talk about scale as well, because a lot of times when you're independent and black, a lot of your time is trying to figure out how to get stories, present those stories, and also try to figure out funding. So when you have all that going on, a lot of times you don't have time to really try to submit yourself to be on there because, as everybody on this on the panel knows, sometimes you have to like submit yourself to be considered to be on some of these shows. But at the same time, when you're dealing with somebody like a Young Turks or a Rising like that, they have people who research. And I tell people all the time, these people sit around on social media. They have interns that sit around and see who's hot when it comes to black media. And they pick and choose who they want. But to answer your question simply, it's like they get their 1 or 2 black people. They have them on a continuous basis, and they don't step out of that paradigm because they know what they're going to say.
Garland.
Third rails. That's what it is. I think it's third rails. They know people who won't avoid the third rails. I can't come on. They don't want me to come on there and say certain things about Gaza or certain, okay, let's talk about Ukraine and I can say certain things about that. You know what I mean? Foreign policy. There's third rails that you just can't step on, right? And they know that there are those of us in the alternative media that we kind of live on a third rail. You know what I mean? That's why we have some success, because they won't touch the third rails. And our whole game is not game, but you know what I mean? Our whole thing is, look, it's critical that we talk about things that the mainstream media won't talk about. And that's why people may like our particular shows. And those are the type of people, they're like, well, we know if we bring this dude on, he's going right to the things that like the people behind us will be like, get this guy off. Let's pretend they're going to be yanking plugs out, trying to pretend like, they had a power outage in a community or something. So I think that's a big part of it, because you, me, Jamal, all of us, we don't have third rails. In fact, I would argue that's why people like us, because like when something happens that we know the mainstream media can't possibly touch, that's the first thing we're going to talk about. And that's why people come to our shows, because they're like, well, you used to be turning on Fox or CNN. They'll never talk about that. Let me see what Sabrina has to say, because I know that's what they know before they even go to your channel. That's going to be the big, the number one show.
Jamal.
Yeah.
And one question for you also with this, Jamal, is there a rejection to anti-imperialist voices?
Yes, obviously. I mean, yes. I mean, look, think of the hell Donald Trump is going through right now. And, think of Bernie Sanders, the warmonger, screaming, look, I don't take issue if people go after Donald Trump, especially on the left, for the things that he's doing domestically. God bless. It's atrocious, right? I don't have issues with him putting the screws to the CIA, but firing all of these government workers, going after these programs, going after Medicaid, trying to just basically effectively destroy the state in the way that state apparatus works. All of that's atrocious, right? But the notion that there will be so loud voices trying to stop him ending a war is outrageous, especially people who consider themselves lefties and who consider themselves, I am anti-war. However, I want to keep this war going because Donald Trump is the one that's trying to end it. It's outrageous, right? And so you have to scream very loud. It's the orthodoxy is to be okay with this stuff. An unprovoked war of aggression, a revolution of dignity. It's cool, right? If you think of Brian Williams, where he was effectively touching himself on air when Trump fired off the missiles into Syria. Okay, how is the president justifying doing this? And yet Brian Williams would not ask the question, how is the president justified in doing this? For him, this is the moment that Trump seemed presidential to me. It's like it's like a guiding star. They never took issue with Joe Biden in the things that he was doing in regards to the escalations. Zero issue with it at all. The fact that it could start a third world war, no issue. Like there is a North Star in regards to the way, let's say, the media and the political space work. And they are perfectly okay with more war. And so it is like, imagine a person going on CNN and saying, hey, maybe we should stop the war. Okay, that's rare. If you think of the run-up to the Ukraine war, there was no voices saying calm down or back away. If you remember, the progressives put out the letter effectively saying, hey, we should be working towards peace, not necessarily working towards escalating war. They pulled that letter in one day. One day they pulled that letter after they're being thoroughly chastised for having the temerity to even say, hey, maybe we should be working towards peace as opposed to more conflict. So yeah, I think part of it is anti-imperial voices. I think the other one is Garland is right. They don't. They know who they're bringing on when they bring them on. And I watched Malik on CNN. Malik, my co-host, he was on. He's been on CNN. He's been doing good work. Granted, he's Republican, but whatever. He's been doing good work for a Republican. They are trash on foreign policy issues. It's so it's so very surface. There's no context given to how something happened. There's a lot of dropping the ball or hiding the ball when they're talking about various stories. Oftentimes they're bringing on people from the CIA, neocons, FBI, etc. They have a very specific point of view that they tend to push on these issues. And bringing on somebody like Garland, myself, who would try to add context to it, is not part of the script. So no, I don't have an expectation that I'd get a call from CNN.
They fired Tucker Carlson. They fired Tucker Carlson, and he was had the best numbers on all of, because he brought on people that would say, "Hey, Julian Assange should be let go." You're out of here, buddy.
Yep, Edward Snowden. Maybe it wasn't unprovoked. He would say that stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. Tucker Carlson would also say stuff like, "Hey, what's wrong with having a white capital? Why can't we just have a place where only white people can be?" Right? He'd say random stuff like that. But he would also question this kind of orthodoxy of foreign policy in a way that I approve, frankly.
All right. Well, everyone, before you go, can you please let everybody know how they can follow your work? We'll go back up to Torren.
Well, you can follow my work on Twitter, Torren Walker. You can also follow me on my YouTube channel, Torren Walker TV. You can also check out my Substack if you want to see my long form written work. torrenwalker.substack.com. You notice a trend there, everybody. And also, if you want to check out some of my other stuff, I'm always on Twitter a lot. I'm probably on there maybe more than I need to be, but you can always find my stuff there.
Awesome. Garland.
Same thing. Garland Nixon on. I'm on not on Twitter. That's a whole nother story. But I'm on YouTube and Rumble and Rockfin and Facebook, Instagram. At Garland in on Telegram. So, and I'm on YouTube every day. I'm throwing something out there with somebody.
And Jamal.
I'm on Twitter. My Twitter account is been reestablished after being stolen for the last several months. So thankfully that's back on. At Jamal Thomas, but more so on YouTube under the Jamal Thomas channel. The Jamal Thomas Morning Show. It comes on from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday.
All right. Okay. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the panel there. Awesome time there with everybody. I hope you enjoyed all of the guests, you guys. We still have news stories to cover tonight. I am not going to be quick update. I'm not going to be live tomorrow night because Saturday is my birthday. And so this is my birthday weekend coming up and I got some plans for that. But that's right. Going to be 1 year older, man. What's up? But we do have a couple of stories that I do want to get into that I think are very important tonight. Theme is Mad World, kind of like the song Mad World. Yeah. And I think you'll understand why when we get to these stories. Let's go ahead and let's give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. And StreamYard added something a little new here called Scenes. So I want to make sure that people can see this. Let me just check really quick to make sure to see it shows it when I'm sharing. Okay, it does. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators, there's Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. They're pretty cool too. I think we like those guys as well. And there are also members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. We call them newbies. Let's give it up for Chelsea Lane. Hey, hey, hey. Let's go. Based. All right. Let's get to some of those comments, ladies and gentlemen, and then we'll dive into our next news story. Thank you. Natalie says, happy birthday, Sabby. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, people are wishing me early happy birthday. Thank you. Thank you, Aladen, for the super sticker. And also thank you for gifting one Sabby membership. We're also going to give a shout out to Megay, who also gifted one Sabby membership. Thank you. Raphael says Jasmine Crockett is blackface in white supremacy. You know, people been on Jasmine. Well, you're going to see a little bit of Jasmine tonight too. I'm sorry. People been on Jasmine for quite a bit. Thank you, Jonathan. Do y'all think Doge will be exposed as fraud before midterms? Those savings are bogus. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I have noticed like more people are starting to push back on it. So, but we'll see, Jonathan. We will see. No one says more of this panel, please. Awesome. Keep that in mind. We'll have another Black Media panel with different guests as well. Thank you, Melanie. Happy birthday, Sabby. I'm a Pisces too. Which version of Mad World do you like best? I like the first verse. The first verse is probably my favorite part, right? And usually with most songs is the chorus. Mad world. Thank you, Jay. Happy birthday, Sabby. Wishing you all the best in the year to come. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And thank you, Blueser. Happy birthday, Sabs. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. You're so sweet. Let's get those comments on Rockfin, Eric. And then we're moving on up. Thank you so much, Dave, for the tip on Rockfin. Thanks, Sabs. You know I'm going to love this show focused on real concerns in journalism, real talk. And thank you for this one as well. Great panel. Thanks, Sabs and Eric. Sorry for crowding the chat a little in the panel. All right. Thank you. And we are moving on to our next story. Again, the theme tonight is Mad World. And if you've never heard that song from Tears for Fears, definitely listen to it. There's also a remake by Seal. That one's pretty decent too. And I'm not big on remakes. And don't forget to give a shout out to Terry Hinton, who's in the chat, who is my Boston B-Day twin buddy. Happy birthday, Terry. Happy birthday. That's right. Hey. All right. We're going to get into the first story, ladies and gentlemen, and this one involves AOC and other Democrats. The Democratic Party is having an identity crisis, and this identity crisis is starting to evolve into straight up embarrassment. And that's what you're going to see happen right here on the screen. There is multiple fractions happening within the Democratic Party. The first one here, we're going to jump in with AOC here. She has given a response here to Donald Trump's State of the Union. We're going to listen to part of this, and I'm going to tell you how all of these people are not coalescing together, and it's becoming more noticeable. Listen to this.
I watched the whole thing, but I watched it from home. Everybody makes different decisions.
Oh, I don't think people can see it. So here we go again with this. I'm so sorry, guys. It's just that not YouTube. This thing, I don't know what. Eric, can you help me out here? StreamYard has this new thing on the side panel that says scenes. And now it's like when you're sharing the screen in order for it to show. Do you see it, Eric?
Yeah, click on the arrow on that thing to get rid of it. Just one thing.
Okay, but when I share the screen,
I thought it was okay.
It was, but it says show on stage. Oh, I think it's showing now. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you may have to hit a thing. Oh, wait. So, all right, try it now.
Okay.
All right. Did that one go okay? And you can play it? I guess it's on the other screen to play it, but.
No, it's not.
So that looks okay to me.
Right, but it's not showing on YouTube. It's not on YouTube. It's just a black screen.
Oh yeah, shoot. That's weird. Okay.
So let me see if this fixes it. Sorry, guys. I don't know. That fixed it.
What'd you do?
So on the side, the left side panel, there's a thing that says scenes.
Scene, yeah.
And it had me on demo scene 2, and I need to be on demo scene 1. I don't know why it's doing this.
Thanks, StreamYard, for the new feature.
Okay, you come out. Let me make sure it stays. Sorry, guys.
All right. Remember, there's an old Monty Python. Wrong. Do it again.
Okay, guys, here we go. Sorry about that.
Felt like I couldn't. I didn't feel like I could legitimize his presence. That being said, you know, I know different people had different takes on it. In terms of the House of Representatives, you know, I'll give you an alternative perspective. In terms of the House of Representatives, you know, some people feel, and it is true, that the State of the Union occurs in the House of Representatives, known as the People's House. And technically, in terms of the proceedings of the State of the Union, an interesting thing about the House is that it is different from almost every other chamber in that only House members are typically allowed in the House of Representatives. So anybody else that is brought into the House, that walks into the House, has to be invited. And so Trump actually has to be formally invited to the House floor in order to be allowed into the House floor. Same thing with all those senators and the cabinet members, etc. So, you know, I think other people had a certain logic, which is that this is the people's house, and Trump showing up should not kind of force the duly elected representatives of that chamber, especially those who disagree with him, out.
Okay, so we can already see that there is a split happening here, right? Because there were a number of people, or some people, that decided not to attend. AOC was one of those people that decided not to attend Trump's State of the Union address. And then there were some that decided to attend, but they decided to wear pink as like their way of protesting against Trump, or they were holding up signs, right? So here's where the criticism is coming in. A lot of people, and if you look online, a lot of people feel that people like AOC, who was not there, still should have been there, or they feel like people who were wearing pink and were holding up signs should have all gotten up and walked out with Al Green. Al Green is the representative that was kicked out of the House. So people have different opinions about it, but it's very clear, not just online, but also, as you'll see on corporate media was talking about this as well. People are just not happy with the way that the Democrats decided to handle Trump's State of the Union address. And some people feel like everybody should have got up and walked out with Al Green. Some people feel like, long story short, people just saw that there are fractions and that they're not all on the same page, right? Okay. Now we get to this part here, and I think this is why this is interesting as well. She's going to get into the part about healthcare. And I think people need to also see this, because this part, it's kind of damning that she wants to mention it now, because she really didn't want to talk about it when Biden and Kamala were in office. Listen to this part about the healthcare.
Talk about, like, you know, if you do not have a job, and you do not have a job for a long period of time, and like the percentage of people on that, on Medicaid, it's like I Don't quote me on it, but I think it's like 3 or 4%. Very, very, very small. And those are people who are often looking for work. And the vast majority of people on Medicaid, low income, because we know what private health insurance is like, right? Low income, disabled, major disabilities that would really prevent people from having like full-time work, or any other kind of extenuating circumstance. Medicaid has been means tested to death. So they're coming after it. And like, this is as someone who believes that healthcare is a human right. I personally believe in a single payer healthcare system. But if you want to compromise and go with a public option, at the end of the day, like, the worst sin that can happen, in my view, the worst sin that can happen is that you accidentally gave someone health care.
So here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing, guys. So I believe in universal health care as well. I believe everybody should have health care in this country. That's no secret. But unlike AOC, the difference is that when Biden won the presidential election, I didn't stop talking about it. I didn't stop fighting for it. When Biden and Kamala took office, don't forget that Medicare for All activists organized Medicare for All marches in over 50 cities across this country. And it wasn't just people who were progressives. It wasn't just people who were socialists. There were even some conservatives who agree with that policy who were marching with us. AOC was nowhere to be found. There was only one member of the squad who attended the Medicare for All marches, and that was Cori Bush. She attended the one in DC, but she also told people that they weren't too happy with us doing those marches. The reason why I bring this up, ladies and gentlemen, is because the reason why we are in this position right now where it could be possible that people could lose their Medicaid is because when people like AOC had a narrow majority, they chose not to use it to their advantage to the working class people, even though we begged them to do so. That's how we got here. When we asked AOC and others to force the vote for Medicare for All against Nancy Pelosi's speakership, they didn't want to do it. They didn't want any part of it. Because once Biden took office, they didn't want to fight anymore. This game that they have been playing is that we are going to fight or pretend to fight when the Republicans win, actually only when Trump wins. But when Biden and Kamala were in office, did we have universal health care for everybody? No. When Biden and Kamala were in office, did Joe Biden expand Obamacare like he promised to do? No. So why weren't they still fighting for those issues at that point in time? Because their party was in power and they were told to get in line. That's not what they were sent to DC to do. Now, they don't even have a narrow majority anymore. So now they're useless. This is why it was so important to take advantage of that opportunity when they had it. Now they don't have it. So now they can't get anything accomplished. I want people to understand this. You talking about progressive policy? They can't get anything accomplished, at least into the midterms. You don't know what's going to happen in the midterms. But right now, they can't get anything for progressive policies. And so now they're giving these long talks and they're just like, we got to fight back against, Medicaid. People might lose Medicaid. We got to fight back against that and da-da-da. You probably wouldn't be in this position if you took advantage of the narrow majority that you had when you had it. And maybe you could have gotten some of these progressive things through. But no, you guys decided to go along with dim leadership. And that's how we end up in this position. You don't know what could have happened A number of things if they really could have delivered for working class people in this country, Donald Trump may not be president right now. But no, it didn't help when you had squad members agree with Joe Biden and say he's doing a great job when y'all knew he was not doing a great job. The Democratic Party is fractured. You can tell they're fractured because this is what they call fighting. And when I say that people, hold on one second. I really do hate this new thing. Let's see if it shows up. Sorry about this, guys. I hate this new thing in StreamYard. It's really annoying. There we go. When I say that people are just playing games, this is what I'm talking about. You got Jasmine Crockett here with everything that's going on in the country. She thinks this is the right response right now.
Oh no.
It's a cultural divide. I'm gonna get it on the floor.
You really about to do it?
40 acres in the mule. This is bigger than the music.
You really about to do it?
Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
They get on it like that.
Hey, I'm tripping, I'm sliding, I'm riding through the back like fuck. Mustard on a beat, bro. Deep bow and rap. He a freak though. Man down, call like Amber Lambs. Tell him breathe. Let them boys get across, they walk around like T's. What's up with these?
Here's the problem, folks. Now is not the time for this. It just like it's like they're tone deaf or something. Why are you dancing? Is this your idea of fighting? I don't know what's happening here. You got AOC sitting down and she's on her phone and she's telling people we might lose Medicaid. I didn't go to the State of Union address. We might lose Medicaid. Jasmine Crockett's out here dancing. And then to make matters worse, because this is what I mean when I say it's fractured. It's all over the place. You even have them, and I don't know who thought this was a good idea. Jesus Christ. Somebody told some of the congressmen to get together, and they told them to, for whatever reason, to do like this video game presence here. And it's so freaking annoying. It's so freaking annoying. Look at this. What is this? I had to mute it because of the music. What are they doing? Who came up with this? This is crazy. What the? So this is supposed to be like Street Fighter, you guys, I guess. And it says choose your fighter, and they want you to choose one of them to fight. This is their idea of fighting. I don't know whoever came up with this. I don't know who these consultants are, who these strategists are, whoever came up with this idea. This is stupid. People are mocking them. People are laughing at them online. They're making fun of them. They're not with you. They're laughing at you. Look at what it says. Bento box queen. Like who? AOC, it says youngest woman plus Latina. What is this? It just youngest Black woman elected to Congress. Hates balloons. House minority whip. Not into hair dye. Are you serious? Like this is the kind of things that you do when you're winning. You're not winning. That's why this is so stupid. Totally not getting the moment. Totally not getting the moment. And so then, as you'll see, when we talk about fractured, so you got video game dancers, you got Jasmine Crockett dancing down the halls of Congress, AOC saying, I didn't attend the State of the Union. And then you have, you have Miss Alyssa Slotkin, Alyssa Slotkin here, who is here to tell people, this is so annoying. I'm sorry, you guys. There we go. Alyssa Slotkin here, who is here to tell people, I guess, that basically she wants the Democratic Party to be like the Republican Party. What is this?
He believes in cozying up to dictators like Vladimir Putin and kicking our friends like the Canadians in the teeth. He sees American leadership as merely a series of real estate transactions. As a Cold War kid, I'm thankful it was Reagan and not Trump in office in the 1980s. Trump would have lost us the Cold War. Donald Trump's actions suggest that in his heart, he doesn't believe we're an exceptional nation. He clearly doesn't think we should lead the world. Look, America is not perfect, but I stand with the majority of Americans who believe we are still exceptional, unparalleled. And I would rather have American leadership over Chinese or Russian leadership any day of the week.
And just what is happening here? So Alyssa Slotkin, she's one of the more centrist. She wants the Democratic Party to basically be like the Republicans. She's out here giving praise to Ronald Reagan. She's former CIA. Like when I say it's a mad world, I mean, it's a mad world. And then on top of that, Congressman Al Green. And this is another thing that people are criticizing. I can bring this in here. Congressman Al Green. He was the one that was removed. One second. This is so annoying. Yeah, Eric, it's not. One second. It's, I wish I could just get rid of scene altogether. One second, guys. I'm sorry. It won't, I can't share this. Like it's not letting me, it's not showing anything on YouTube. Okay, there we go. I shouldn't have to keep doing this. This is so annoying. But you have Congressman Al Green here who said last night, I stood up for those who need Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. Democrats will never abandon the fight to make sure every American has a safe, healthy, and financially secure life. I said what I said. So some of the criticism that's coming this way is that people feel as though everybody else should have got out and walked. They should have walked out with Al Green. So there's friction there. And I say this because now, as we can see, Al Green has been censured. The final vote came to 224 to 198. 10 Democrats voted to censure him. Listen to this. And you can see the votes here.
On this vote, the yeas are 224, the nays are 198, with 2 answering present. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. Shh. Will Representative Green present himself to the well? By its adoption of House Resolution 189, the House has resolved that Representative Al Green be censured, that Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure.
So what they're doing now, ladies and gentlemen, is they're starting to sing "We Shall Overcome."
And that Representative Al Green be censured with public reading of this resolution by the Speaker. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. What's that? The House to come to order. Clear the well, please. Clear the well. The House has to continue its business. Just say the House.
This is just, guys, do you see why I'm saying like this is a joke? We live in a mad world. Like they're sitting here saying we shall overcome. It's so performative. Again, this is their way of showing, look, guys, we're fighting. We're fighting. That's not fighting. That's not fighting. What the hell is this? Remember when Rashida Tlaib was censured? There were Democrats that voted for her too. Even Jamil Hill is making fun of it. Jamil Hill said, Democrats never learn. And there's the picture there she put up of Nancy Pelosi and Clyburn kneeling and Kente Cloth, excuse me. And she's, of course, referring to, again, what I just showed you, them saying we shall overcome. Even she is mocking it. She's a Democrat stan. You guys look like fools. It's embarrassing. I'm just like, you can't be serious. You can't be. You can't be. You can't. And I say you can't be. And Nina Turner named all of the names. You can't be. Because it's one of those things where it's like, let me add this. This is so annoying. We'll share it this way. Nina Turner, I have to share it this way. This StreamYard thing is ridiculous. Nina Turner says it here. 10 cowardly Democratic members of Congress just voted to censure Congressman Al Green. Jared Moskowitz, Marie Glusenkamp, Tom Suzy, Marcy Kaptur, Jim Himes, Chrissy Houlihan, Amy Barra, Ed Case, Jim Costa, Laura Gillen. They should be ashamed. So you got Democrats going along with what the Republicans want. This is ridiculous. The Democratic Party is in a crazy, crazy place right now. A crazy, crazy place. I cannot kid you not. And to me, it's just like, I don't understand. I have to share the screen. To me, it doesn't make any sense. They're making fun of it on CNN. On CNN, they're making fun of their low approval rating in Congress. Listen to this. Oh, we can't hear it. Let me try this again. Eric, it's really hard to share this. I don't know why it's doing this, but I wish they would have never did this scenes thing here because I can't see. It's annoying. Sorry, guys.
Percent approval rating, and even amongst their own party has like a 40%, the lowest Quinnipiac has ever measured. And I think last night and sort of what's been going on, there's a reason why congressional Democrats have like a 20% approval rating, and even amongst their own party has like a 40%, the lowest Quinnipiac has ever measured. And I think last night and sort of what's been going on over the past few months is a gosh darn good illustration of that.
Agreed.
Thank you, Hannah.
So they're making fun of the fact that the congressional Democrats have such a low approval rating. Like, and you guys are out there dancing through the halls of Congress. You're out there pretending that you're video game fighters. It's embarrassing. You're standing there and you're singing, "We shall overcome." This is sad. It's pathetic. That's not fighting. That's virtue signaling. And even Jamil Hill is calling you out. That's how you know how sad you are. This is just ridiculous. It's a mad world. Jesus Christ. Let's get to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties, you guys. StreamYard rolled out a beta scenes thing, and it's really messing things up. And I don't know how to, I can't even remove it. It's like it's stuck there and they're making you use it, and I don't want to use it. So it's so freaking annoying. Anywho, let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Pachico. Thank you, Sabby, for another excellent panel discussion. They just keep getting better and better. Thank you. Pachico's been a member for 30 months. Thank you, Trash Panda says, "Happy birthday, Sabby." Thank you. Thank you, Marlon. Have you looked into the HR 22 SAVE Act? I have not yet, but I've heard about that. Someone else told me to look at that. Thank you for the super sticker, Krista. Thank you, Mark. AOC reminds me of what Judas would have been like if he had lived. Damn. Thank you, David. AOC is that person who wears an eat the rich dress, but also buys a Tesla. She is the definition of talk is cheap, and that's all she seems to do. Thank you, Navo. Sabby, you have a really pretty voice. Did you ever think about being a singer when you were growing up? I used to do talent shows with my friends. That's about as far as that got. But my voice was better back then, I think. Thank you, David. Mad World. Hope that's a Tears for Fears reference. It is. David knows. CM says 11 months chat is cool. Dims are corny. Shout out to CM. Thank you, baby Ethernet. Peak neoliberalism. Pull out the kente clothes. Thank you, New York. Ask the Republicans who their guy is in 2028. They will impulsively yell Vance. Ask the Democrats, crickets. Whiners with no identity, sad. Shout out to TJ White, who's been a member for 4 months, says, "Happy birthday, Sabby." Thank you so much. Shout out to Aladdin, who gifted 1 Sabby membership. Thank you, Where's the Love? Hold on tight, folks. Dim's gonna lose midterms too. Thank you, Wanker. Green was done talking, just standing is wrong. Thank you, New York Varsity. Al Green saying, "Let's stay together," but he walked out alone. You know what? You being funny, but I was thinking about that too. I was thinking about that. Let's stay together. Loving you whenever. Thank you, Wanker. Just standing is nothing wrong. Thank you. Where's the love? That singing BS is why all those old CBC members and their proteges gotta go. Thank you, David. All 10 Democrats who voted for censure are against single-payer health care and are backed by AIPAC, of course. Thank you, all's one same. Instead of doing the people's work, Congress does song and dance. Thank you, Echo Pup. Democrats are sad. No wonder they lose. Thank you, Miranda, for being a member for 1 month. And thank you, Where's the Love? Happy birthday, Sabby. Thank you. And thank you, Eco Pup says, can somebody please run against AOC? Yeah. That needs to happen. That needs to happen. Okay.
All right, we're going to try some tech support on the fly here. So you see on the screen, is that the usual email that you log into StreamYard with?
Yeah.
All right, and see if you can get that code. And I think that may help us here. I think it's a combination of things as usual. See if that lets us in.
Okay.
And then I got to do the screen share again. Let me get in here.
Sorry, guys.
Good. Let's And I just got to do this present, so we don't have to do that in a minute.
I just don't know why StreamYard even did this. It's a waste of time.
Get rid of that. There we go.
I
think they're trying to do a thing like you get on OBS Studio where you can show scenes. But I think we should be in good shape now.
Well, let's test it out because I got to go to the veterans video. So we should be going back.
Okay, let me go back. Is that the first one of the next story?
Yeah. Okay, so let's see if it lets me share.
All right, give it a shot.
And I'll just check on YouTube to make sure it shows.
Hey, I think we're all right.
Okay.
It might just work.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And you want a Rockfin? Do you want to read a Rockfin comment?
Sure.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, Wild Rose on I think it's Rumble. Thank you so much. Happy early birthday, Sabby. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jewel in the Machine. Happy birthday, Sabby. One more year, bring the fire. Thank you. Okay, we're going to dive into the next story, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. And we're moving on to this next story, guys. This may be something people are not quite aware of. I was telling you guys about these federal jobs, right? And one of the things that I was telling you is like, when we're talking about the number of people that have lost federal jobs, it's important to remember that we're talking about also people who are veterans, okay? So one of the things that I am very familiar with, my dad is a veteran. A lot of times when people retire from the military, they get other jobs, right? So when they get other jobs, most of the time, these are federal jobs, whether it's working for the VA, whether it's, working for Social Security or, what other type of federal job. A lot of times people will go and they will work for the post office. Like that's also not uncommon for veterans to do. So when we're talking about people losing their jobs, we're also talking about veterans. And I want to bring this up here. As you can see, it says Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Doge have fired more veterans than any administration in history in just 6 weeks. The VA has been hit especially hard. Now centers for veteran care are understaffed, struggling, and ill-equipped to provide help. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here. I want you to hear what this veteran has to say. This is from More Perfect Union.
With everything being let go, patient care ends up being delayed. And hypothetically, what if it is a veteran on that patient table and, that instrument or that device can't be delivered because it didn't get there in a timely manner?
Mark Wagstaff is one of 6,000 veterans who have been fired.
Yeah, it's not showing again, Eric. This is what I was saying. It's showing me, but it's not showing on YouTube. It's a blank screen. Just let me add it again. Oh, now it's showing. Like it was like a real long delay. 1 second.
No, now it's not. Here, let's try taking it off. Let's see if we...
Because for those who don't know, like StreamYard is ahead of YouTube. So there's a delay. I have to wait. It's not showing.
I know. Jeez.
This is so. Now I'm not showing.
Yeah, I'm just clicking buttons to try to see if.
It's showing now. Well, it
showed first. Oh, that was interesting. Okay, let's see. Maybe we have a workaround here. So it didn't, but if I hit full screen and then come back out of full screen, see what that does. Yeah. All right, that's our workaround. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You know what I mean by the full screen button?
Yeah.
So when we add it. Okay. All right. Carry on. Let me get out of here.
All right. So I want you guys to hear what this veteran says here. Listen to this.
With everything being let go, patient care ends up being delayed. And hypothetically, what if it is a veteran on that patient table and, you know, that instrument or that device can't be delivered because it didn't get there in a timely manner?
Mark Wagstaff is one of 6,000 veterans who have been fired from the federal government by Elon Musk and Doge.
Donald Trump has fired more veterans than any president in the history of the United States. In 6 weeks!
Obviously, with me being impacted, I'm downsizing my current living arrangement right now.
Pause. So here's someone who is a veteran that now has to downsize their living arrangement because they lost their job. This is what I was trying to tell people. If you're going after waste, I said you start with the Pentagon first and you go after the Pentagon budget, right? So cut the defense spending. That's the easiest one to go to. No, Elon Musk is going after workers. So my question to those who care a lot about the veterans, if you care about the veterans, you shouldn't be happy about this. And everybody, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to think about it because it's not happening to me, but it could happen to you. So now he has to figure out what he's going to do with his living situation. A veteran. And I've said this before. A lot of times people say, oh, we care about the veterans. No. Most of the time, people don't really care about those veterans. Let's continue.
To make sure that I can still afford everything I need to afford and have a roof over my head, you know, clothes on my back, food to eat.
Mark worked for the VA, coordinating healthcare supply logistics for his fellow vets.
I was supporting all the clinics, everything from the ER room to the operating room to just primary care, your basic checkups. When you talk about patient care, we're not just talking about benefits. We're not just talking about disability ratings where, you know, making sure the veterans are compensated for their service and their disabilities. We talk about patient care just coming in to get a Band-Aid.
Right. That part right there. So the VA already had issues to begin with, and I can tell you that from experience. The VA has been known for being slow on certain services. So that's not something that's new. So imagine laying off a lot of workers at the VA. That means that services that were already slow are going to be even more slower. And services that probably weren't as slow before are now going to be slow. You see, I want you to put 2 and 2 together here when I say it's a mad world. I want you to realize that while they are laying off people who are federal workers, they are taking from them. This guy right now is going to lose some of his wealth. He just told you he has to downsize. So he's going to lose some of his generational wealth that he probably could have passed on to his kids. But you know who's not downsizing? You know who's not losing their generational wealth? The billionaires. Elon Musk, while he's going in and he's taking an axe to all these different positions, notice that he's not losing anything. Notice that he's not losing government contracts. Notice that he's not having to downsize. None of the billionaires are having to lose any wealth. None of the billionaires are having to downsize. That's not a partisan thing. That's just reality. But now you have people, these people are. Now, they spent all these years, they went and fought for their country. They come back home. Okay, we're done with the service now. We are going to get a federal job. And federal jobs come with good benefits. And now he loses his job and he's like, well, now I got to downsize, got to do all this. You went and did all that for your country. And this is how you're paid back in return. Now, as I said before, is there waste? Yes. Should we know how our government is spending the money? Yes. Should people lose their jobs? No. I told you that this would affect working class people. And now you see it's hitting veterans. We'll let him finish.
Who's going to deliver that Band-Aid? We're stewards of the government's money, the taxpayer dollars, but also at the same time, we're doing our best to make those decisions on the best behalf of democracy.
VA healthcare has been thrown into chaos across the country as the Trump administration indiscriminately fires staff.
Patient care is being affected even in this moment as we speak. I'm still connected to my coworkers and friends that still work there. They're working overtime. They're being asked to work, on their day off. Patient care was ever growing in Southern Nevada. So we seen the demand of medical supplies being needed on the field to the point where we were working numerous overtime, working some of the weekends and everything like that. With that strategy, we needed to hire more people.
As a Marine and federal employee, Wagstaff says he's always worked hard for his country. Doge and the Trump administration have been devastating to that ethos.
It makes you question, what good is public service if this is the way we're going to treat, our civil servants in the government sector? We didn't just choose these careers. We still made an oath to the Constitution of the United States. We still raise our hand and take the oath just like any other active duty personnel. And I still stand on that. I'll support and defend this Constitution all day through. I will obey the orders of the President of the United States. But please, Mr. President, give us some guidelines. Give us the path of, what you plan to do, long-term plans. Don't just keep making these decisions brash, day in and day out.
Yeah, so it's
with everything, food to eat.
Mark,
it's unfortunate. Another veteran has lost their job, and like I said before, the billionaires aren't losing any wealth. They're not losing their jobs. They're not losing any of this. These are working class people. A lot of people in the military don't make much money, guys, especially if you're a lower rank. And there ain't none of them making money like Elon or like Jeff Bezos, right? So let's keep it real. Now they are giving tax breaks to the billionaires, but working class people are having to suffer. So someone was asking me in the chat, MBD said, what's your solution, Sabby? Tax the billionaires. Why are we giving billionaires tax breaks? Do you get tax breaks? I don't get a tax break. This is part of the reason why the middle class is almost non-existent in this country, because along the way, we decided to give more benefits and more breaks to the very, very ultra rich, the billionaires, that top 0.01%. They're getting the breaks instead of people who really should be getting those breaks. You got to look back at these things. And so that's how we got here. So when Elon Musk goes through all these different services and he says, I'm going to cut from this, I'm going to cut from that, cut from this, is he cutting his government contracts? No. We got to think, people. We got to think. You can't just say, well, they're better than the other administration or whatever, so I'm fine with it. People are fine with it until it hits you. Because I'm noticing more people are complaining about $10 eggs now. And I hope what this message sends us, what it says to people, what it shows people, is that at the end of the day, these people are not coming to save you. This is why organizing and community building is so important. This is why the Black Panthers did what they did, because they knew the government wasn't going to save them. They knew they weren't going to come and save their community. They said, we have to save and help each other. And they were doing pretty well at that. When people are running for office, you have to remember that they are running to get your vote. After they get your vote, they're not really beholden to you anymore. We've seen this regardless of the party. People always talk a good game. I'm going to do this, and that. And then they get in and they don't even do half of that. Half of that. Now, Donald Trump did implement a lot of executive orders that his base did want. However, I'm even seeing Trump supporters on social media say, when he said he was going to get rid of waste, we didn't realize that meant that they were going to lay people off. Now, that veteran is just being laid off, But during the State of the Union address, they made it very clear to you that they're about to let more people come over with H-1B visas to get jobs. So if your campaign was America first, that's not America first. Everybody wake up and see what's going on. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you, Jewel in the Machine. Sorry. Happy birthday, Sabby. One more year of bringing the fire. Thank you. Thank you, Margatina. Happy birthday, Sabby. Thank you so much. Deborah says, thank you for covering veteran struggle to Sabby Sabs and Eric T. Red. Thank you, B says, happy birthday, Sabby. Thank you. Sam, thank you. Jasmine Crockett sets us back 65 years every time she opens her mouth. Ghetto. Man. A lot of people are not happy with Jasmine Crockett. A lot of people are not happy with Jasmine. Oh, no. All right, guys, smash the like button and we're going to move on to the next story and try to do this rather swiftly. This one is interesting. So this was a heated discussion. Okay. Oh, my God. It appears that apparently Donald Trump is in talks with Hamas. Now, apparently, I guess Israel wasn't supposed to know that. And they found out. And that has led to a whole, number of things. But this was the statement that Donald Trump put out. And you guys have got to see this. So let me hear. So this statement, very interesting from Donald Trump. Oh boy. Where do we begin? Actually, I'll just leave it like that so you guys can see. He said, Shalom, Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it's over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. Excuse me. This is your final, warning, your last warning for the leadership. Now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. So, my response to this was imagine him threatening to kill people who have already been occupied, abused, and lost their family through a genocide. This is Trump giving AIPAC and Adelson a nod for their money. So this right here, a lot of people are not happy about this. Even some people, I saw this online, even some people who supported Trump are not happy by this statement. Because he's basically threatening to kill all the people. And just very overt, out there, threatening to kill all the people. That's what the threat is. Does that mean he's going to do it? We don't know. But the threat still isn't right. It's still wrong. It's still wrong. Margaret Kimberly brings up an interesting point. She said that Trump stated on social media that he would kill all the people of Gaza. Biden was different in that he was committed to doing the same thing, but claimed he wasn't doing it. So this brings back what I said before. Remember when I told you that one side is overt and one side is covert? Biden was more covert with his intentions. And he would make public statements and say, I agree. It's sad what's happening in Gaza. It was just all fake, right? But behind the scenes, it was Netanyahu revealed that the Biden administration and Antony Blinken, they knew that Israel was blocking the aid from getting in. They were agreement with this, okay? Just FYI. So had it not been for the protest, they probably would have never said anything about this. So keep that in mind. One side is overt, which is Trump being very overt, and one side is covert. But that brings to question, is this something that Trump is going to do, or is Trump trying to threaten them? Well, I think the timing of this statement was very interesting. We'll get into that in just a second. Right about here, you'll see even Case Study QB, thank you so much for capturing this. You'll see here, even on corporate media, they are talking about this because it was revealed that Donald Trump was talking to Hamas, and Israel was not happy with that. Listen to this.
The White House says its pick for special envoy for hostages has the authority to talk to anyone in negotiations, including Hamas. This is coming after Axios reported the U.S. was holding secret talks with the terrorist group to discuss the release of American hostages and the possibility of a broader deal to end its war with Israel. The move marks a major break from longstanding U.S. policy of not directly engaging with Hamas. Here with us now is Barak Ravid, the Axios reporter who broke the story. Barak, tell us what you learned and how these talks came together.
Good afternoon. This talk started several weeks ago when U.S. hostages envoy Adam Bowler went to Doha, the capital of Qatar, and met with several Hamas officials. There have been several meetings between Bowler and Hamas officials over the last 2 or 3 weeks. The last one was earlier this week. He met with Khalil al-Khaya, who is the head of Hamas's negotiation team and is the, in practice, is the leader of Hamas's political wing. And in those meetings, they discussed first the Americans that are still held by Hamas. One of them is alive, Idan Alexander, but another 4 Americans who are dead and their bodies are being held by Hamas. But they also discussed something broader, how to use a possible release of those Americans as an opening for a broader deal and a long-term truce that will, in effect, end the war in Gaza.
So can you talk to us about the timing? You said it was a few weeks ago. Explain why this came about when it did.
I think it came about because the Trump administration realized that the Israeli government at the moment is not willing to take the necessary steps to push this deal forward. On the other hand, President Trump is committed to bringing back Americans that are held in Gaza for more than 500 days, and one of them is alive. And I think that more broadly, strategically, the idea was to see if you can get Hamas to do this mini deal with the US, whether you can get from there to a broader deal that ends the war. I think the jury is still out about that. The talks are still ongoing. Steve Witkoff, the White House envoy, was supposed to go to Doha last night. He canceled last minute because Hamas refused to move. President Trump held several discussions about it today, and I think we might hear from Trump later today about this issue.
So here's the thing. Of course, Israel is not happy that Donald Trump spoke to Hamas. I mean, I think you should speak to both sides of a conflict, even though we can say Israel is the aggressor here. And for whatever reason, Biden did not want to do that or chose not to do that. I think you should speak to both sides. But Israel is not too happy that Donald Trump spoke to Hamas. And that makes some people wonder the timing of that wasn't really a tweet from Trump. That was from Truth Social, I believe. The timing of that post, right? Was that post posted after it was leaked that he spoke to Hamas, or was that post posted from Donald Trump before it was leaked that he spoke to Hamas? Based on the timestamps that I saw, it looked like it was posted after. So you have to think about that as well. Regardless, what he said is wrong. Like, that's not cool. You don't sit up there and threaten to kill all the people. Now, I will also say this. This is probably, if anything, going to make Israel more angry that it's out there now, that they know that he's been speaking to Hamas as well. Let's continue, and I'll show you the part about the leak.
Oh, okay, that's really interesting. We'll be looking to see what Trump says about that. Talk to us a little bit about how Israel's reacting, because the Israeli Prime Minister's office said Wednesday in a quite restrained comment it had expressed to the United States its position regarding direct talks with Hamas. We should note the White House says Israel was consulted on this. What are you hearing?
Well, Brianna, when I read this comment by the Prime Minister's office, it sort of sounded like something my Polish mother would used to tell me. It was very passive aggressive. I don't think the Israelis were happy about this at all. I think this puts a lot of pressure on Netanyahu, both domestically in Israel and also in his relationship with Donald Trump. Because basically what Donald Trump is telling Netanyahu right now, if you're not moving with this hostage deal, I'm moving on my own. I'm getting my people out. And this is very bad news for Netanyahu.
Yeah, how'd that work out before? But to his point, not the news that Israel wants to hear. Not the news at all. And so we pivot to this part here, right? So Lindsey Graham, I want you to hear how he responded to this. By the way, I still don't understand how Lindsey Graham continues to get elected. And I say that as someone who lived in South Carolina. I don't understand how people continue to vote for this guy. He's a flip-flopper. He has no consistent morals or beliefs or policy positions. He just goes where the wind is blowing. But listen to this. He's another crazy one.
But Trump sent out a tweet today, release the hostages or you will be destroyed. And that's the kind of leadership we need. So I trust Trump. As long as he's in the room, I'm okay.
All right. What did he say? Shalom, Hamas.
Shalom. Which means in South Carolina, we're going to kick your ass if you don't release the hostages.
Thanks for the translation.
Oh, my God. Lindsey Graham, of course, in South Carolina. And Jesus Christ, what a sad representation for South Carolina. But this part here pointed out by Max Blumenthal. So Israel is spying on Trump admin and leaking its sensitive diplomatic moves to the press. This is the part I wanted you guys to see. Behind the scenes, the meetings between Bowler and Hamas officials took place in Doha in recent weeks. While Trump administration consulted with Israel about the possibility of engaging with Hamas, Israel learned about aspects of the talks through other channels, one source said. In other words, it sounds like they were spying on Trump. Sounds like they were spying on those conversations. Because how else would they have known that unless there's a leak somewhere? So unless there's a leak somewhere within the Trump administration, how else would Israel have known that he was talking to Hamas? He didn't tell them he was talking to Hamas. Pay attention to that. Again, it said they learned about aspects of the talks through other channels. And we can interpret what that means. The sources spoke with Axios. Is it Axios? Spoke with Axios on the condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to discuss the sensitive meetings. And Max is retweeting from here. Exclusive U.S. holding secret talks with Hamas on Gaza hostages. So that's Trump kind of going behind Netanyahu's back there and trying to make some type of deal with Hamas as well. And you know what they say? What happens in the dark will come to light, right? So obviously, this is going to really, really, really piss off Israel. So if what Max is saying is correct, that Israel was obviously either spying on Donald Trump or Hamas or whatever, they got that information from somewhere, or Donald Trump has a leak. And then that post where he threatens to kill everybody, that's posted after the leak is revealed. So I don't know if that statement that he made was his way of trying to show Israel that he was still threatening Hamas or whatever. I don't know what that was. I don't know if it's for show or what. Either way, it was wrong. This is all crazy. Like, I really do feel like this can come to a close. That being said, it's not going to come to a close if Israel continues to act like a genocidal maniac, continues to get angry. Now, obviously, Israel's still going to go after the West Bank. They're still going to have destruction there. They're still going to steal homes in the West Bank. They're still going to try to annex, etc. But one of the stories I covered a couple of days ago, I told you that Hamas had made an agreement to leave. That's another thing. Hamas is agreeing to leave Gaza. Now, to that, I asked this question. Where are they going to go? Where is Hamas going to go if they leave Gaza? Are they going to go? I don't think Egypt's going to say, come on in. I don't think. Where are they going to go? And it's not like it's, Hamas is like 5 or 6 people. Like, come on, let's be real. Where are they going to go? So there's a lot happening. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have to sit and wait back. And I feel like every week it's something else that's happening with Gaza or with Israel. But all I can say is that it's crazy times. And I think because of this leak, this is going to make Netanyahu not trust Donald Trump. And if he doesn't trust Donald Trump, he may not be willing to work with Donald Trump. So stay tuned. Crazy talk, folks. Crazy talk. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Brent. Happy birthday, Sabby. You a comfort. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mike, interesting point. I kind of think Trump was set up thinking he was talking to Hamas, but he was talking to an Israeli impersonating Hamas, and they said something so effed up, he made that tweet just saying, hey, there's always a possibility of that, right? Thank you, Marlon. Israel is holding the hostages until the Holocaust is complete. We only hear from Israel with no direct statements from Hamas. Actually, there are statements from Hamas on Al Jazeera. If you watch Al Jazeera, Marlon, they do have video footage of them making statements. Thank you, Chris. According to Gallup, 46% of Americans express support for Israel, which is a 25-year low. Trump's AIPAC handler must have missed this. Yeah, it's bad. Like I told you guys, I don't think Israel can ever recover from that. Thank you, Sable. Sabs, Graham is like the crude rep we have in Texas. Ted Cruz puke face. Happy B-Day, Viva Palestine, and F Trump. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, JJ. I'm tired of all these fools in politics. Thank you so much. I hear you, JJ. All right, guys, smash the like button. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Also, if you're new, I apologize for the technical difficulties. This is usually not the way it is, but StreamYard has been acting a damn fool. Now we're getting to the thick story, ladies and gentlemen. Can we do it? Yeah. I told you guys it's a mad world. And that is also the case when it comes to these congressional testimonies. Recently, several sanctuary city mayors had to testify in front of Congress. And one of those mayors is from Massachusetts. So the mayor of Boston, Mayor Wu, who used to be my former mayor, she is now testifying. in front of Congress, along with Eric Adams and along with Brandon Johnson, who's from Chicago, Eric Adams from New York City. I want to start with this. I think this is part of an opening statement from Eric Adams. And then there's other parts during this testimony that we got to get into because it was crazy, okay? It was all crazy. Out of all of them, I will say this. I do think that Mayor Wu probably performed the best. I think she really held her own. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with her, but I think she did a great job at actually answering the questions. And you'll see what I mean when we get to some of the other clips here. So let's go ahead and bring this in here. Come out here. And here we go.
As a result, New York City was hit with the largest humanitarian crisis in our city's history over the last 3 years. Federal law did not allow me to stop buses from entering New York City. State law required me to provide all in our city with housing and meals and to educate children. City law makes it unlawful to collaborate with ICE for civil enforcement. We complied with all of these legal requirements and still managed the humanitarian crisis with the care and compassion, while at the same time bringing down crime, recovering our economy, and preventing any child from being forced to sleep on the streets. Comprehensive immigration reform is long overdue. While the solution is not within my control as a mayor, I am committed to working with federal officials to go after violent gangs and those who harm residents of our city. This is why we have over 330 NYPD officers assigned to different federal joint task forces, over 70 of which are assigned to task forces with Homeland Security investigation, the criminal investigation arm of ICE. Those task forces focus on many different important priorities, including going after violent gangs and child exploitation. I look forward to sharing New York City collaborations that we do daily with our city, state, and federal partners to keep New York City to continue to be the safest big city in America. Thank you.
So hold up, bro. So for those who are not aware, Eric Adams was one of the mayors that was pretty vocal that he wasn't getting the assistance from the Biden administration that he wanted or he needed to handle the migrant population in New York City at the time. And I would say he was so vocal about it that the Democratic Party kind of turned on him, right? There's an ongoing investigation that's happening with Eric Adams. I'm sure you guys all know about that as well, about corruption, surprise, surprise. But he was one of the mayors that was very vocal and said publicly, Joe Biden, we need help. We need resources. We need this. We need that. And apparently he was not given those resources. So he was very vocal about it. And that was after he had already, decided we're going to give debit cards, et cetera. And then eventually, I think the resources were just overwhelmed, right? I mean, New York City is very dense, like Boston, very dense. So there's not a lot of space to work with. People are kind of living on top of each other, and you only have so much to work with. So some would say that Eric Adams is basically there's a witch hunt against him because he spoke out against the Biden administration during this, right? So that was Eric Adams, hoorah there, being kind of vocal about it. And then I want to bring into this part right about here. I believe this is when Mayor Wu comes in. Listen to this.
I'm not familiar with that law because I'm focused on the city of Boston, but we follow all state, city, and federal laws in Boston.
What happens when you get in conflict with them? Who do you support?
The Constitution, as I understand it, doesn't require cities or police officers or anyone to follow their laws in conflict, follow federal laws in conflict with local laws or state laws.
Okay, in the Constitution it says, and it's explicit, that the federal government has jurisdiction and supremacy over all immigration laws, right? I mean, I heard it a number of times from my colleagues over here. We're the ones who can define that. We're the ones that have that. We just heard we want a comprehensive immigration policy. How can you get a comprehensive immigration policy when you're defining it from the very get-go? You're building it on false premises and false tenets.
Respectfully, Congressman, you could pass bipartisan legislation, and that would be comprehensive immigration law. The false narrative is that immigrants in general are criminals, or immigrants in general cause all sorts of danger and harm. That is actually what is undermining safety in our communities.
Let me pause here for a second. So you guys got to understand, Michelle Wu, and by the way, I've spoken to her in person. I've confronted her in person about housing issues in Boston. And she's a little lady. Like she's very small. Like she's like short, like, and I'm 5'5". So like she's a short little lady. But she did, listen to what I had to say, and I didn't get the answer that I wanted, but she'll listen, she'll hear what you have to say. And she has admitted that she failed when it comes to the housing issue in Boston, because that was her number one thing that she ran on, that she failed, right? So she's running for re-election again. I'll get into that story another time, because Robert Kraft's son is running against her. So we'll talk about that another time. But you got to understand, Michelle Wu went to Harvard. All right. You're not going to trip her up with these questions. So that's why I said, when you go back, if you watch this whole thing, I feel like she did the best. She performed the best when it comes to just answering the questions. So you may not believe, or you may not support what she's saying, but she knows how to answer the questions. And then there was this part right about here. Let me bring it just a little bit more. Listen to what she said here.
You're building it on false premises and false tenets.
Respectfully, Congressman, you could pass bipartisan legislation, and that would be comprehensive immigration law. The false narrative is that immigrants in general are criminals, or immigrants in general cause all sorts of danger and harm. That is actually what is undermining safety in our communities. If you wanted to make us safe, pass gun reforms. Stop cutting Medicaid. Stop cutting cancer research. Stop cutting funds for veterans. That is what will make our city safe.
Yes, thank you. I yield back.
Sure. Yeah, so that was a good way to answer that question, because notice what he said at the end of the statement. He goes, "Thank you, I yield back." Yeah, he ain't got nothing to say to that. If you say stop cutting Medicaid, stop doing this, he don't have anything to say to that. I was like, oh, I yield back. And she just had a baby. And she had her baby there. Right? I believe, if I remember correctly, she did ask them if there could be a delay, because she had just given birth, but she's there with the baby and all that kind of stuff. Now, to that point, what Mayor Wu did not address, and honestly, Ayanna Pressley was a part of this committee, and she should have brought this up, but I know she wasn't going to, because she's trying to play her political game too. Ayanna Pressley, of all the people, who is a Boston resident, of all the people who is in Congress and very familiar with Roxbury, with Dorchester, of all the people, you know that it was Mayor Wu and Governor Healey's decision to kick the Black kids out of the rec center in Roxbury so that they could house migrants in the rec center. And I point this out because of this. First, you took them to Martha's Vineyard, and all the rich people who claim to be so liberal and so caring basically said they can't stay here. It was like that scene in Forrest Gump when the guy goes, "You can't sit here." It was like that. You can't sit here, not in our backyard. And Martha's Vineyard is vacant most of the year. Keep that in mind. So they took them from Martha's Vineyard and they said, okay, let's go and put them in other communities. And guess what communities they put them in? Low income Black communities. Roxbury is one of the lowest income neighborhoods in Boston. They don't have the resources. You took a rec center from a black community, you kicked them out and you brought another group of people in. The black kids who had something to do after school by going to the rec center and they played rec sports, now all of a sudden had nothing to do. I always grew up with the belief that kids need something to do other than school. And this is the way that I was raised as well. You ain't got to agree with me, but it is what it is. The reality is, when you take these things away from the children and they live in impoverished communities, you are taking away something that they enjoy doing, and now they got free time on their hands. And this is when trouble can come in. This is when gangs can come in and try to take those kids and get them out in the streets. This was something those kids had to do while their parents were working 2 jobs. So yes, that is a problem. And there are other places where they could have gone, but you brought them into a low-income black community, taking resources from the black people who are there and giving it to them. That is a problem. And there are plenty of people in Boston that have a problem with Mayor Wu and Maura Healey about that. You didn't ask, they just took. So I will say that she does a good job of answering questions, but what she did without getting the permission of the people in the community, without even asking them, what they did was wrong. You don't take those kind of things from those kids. You don't take those types of things from those communities. That is wrong, period. Now we are moving on, because now we're going to the next part. Like I said, this hearing was over 6 hours long. I believe this is the part where Byron comes in to ask these mayors how much they have spent on migrant communities in the past couple of years. Now, again, don't forget Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago, who has received a lot of animosity from people within his community about what he has done and how he's walked over the people in the community and bent over backwards for the migrant community that came in. A lot of people are mad at him. I want you to hear how they answer these questions. This is very important to see.
9 million. Mayor Johnson, Chicago. How much has the city of Chicago spent on illegal immigration?
If you're referring to the 2022 up to 2024 of the buses coming from Texas, roughly the same percentage of the state of Texas, about 1% of our overall budget.
What is that? Because I don't have the city's budget in front of me. Numbers.
It's 1%, and if you want the actual calculation, we can make sure someone...
You're the mayor. You don't have the math in front of you?
It's 1% of the overall budget over the last 4 years.
That's why you're a failing
which
mayor.
is
Mayor
the same
Adams.
number that
How
was
much
sent
did the city
from
of
us.
New York?
Thank you. I was going to bring it up. MBD, Brandon Johnson, 6.7% approval rating. Ladies and gentlemen, how could you show up there unprepared? Brandon Johnson, how could you show up there unprepared? How do you not know the answer to that question? I mean, Brandon Johnson just woke up one day and was just like, yeah, I want to be mayor. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And I've spoken to people in Chicago. They are not happy with Brandon Johnson. Not happy. But this, you show up to Congress, you're not there because they're proud of what you're doing. You're there because they're questioning what you did. And whether you guys agree with sanctuary cities or not, the reality is Brandon Johnson should have shown up prepared. What do you mean you don't have the numbers? You don't know how much you spent? Oh, it's about roughly 1% of, we don't know what that means. We don't know. And that's why, so Byron can sit up there and say to you, that's why you're the worst performing failed mayor. That's why he can talk to you like that, because your numbers show that and your actions show that. It's just, Jamal Green ran against him. It looks like to me the people should have voted for Jamal Green. It just, I don't know. 2% of the, we don't know. We don't know. You guys know that city council approves the budget? Guess who signs it?
Actually spent on illegal immigration. Mayor Johnson, I already asked you, you don't have a hard number. And if you don't have a hard number, you're not running your city well. Mayor Adams, how much did the city of New York actually spend on illegal immigration?
$6.9 billion of taxpayers'
$6.9 billion of
taxpayer
money on a problem that was fostered on the American people. Mayor Wu, in the city of Boston, how much did you spend?
We don't ask about immigration status and delivering city
You don't
services,
ask
so
about
we
how
don't
much
have
money
that
the city
number.
of Boston has spent on illegal immigration?
We
Are
don't
you out of your
distinguish
mind?
between immigration status.
Do you
as
manage
part
your
of our
budget
city
or not,
policies.
Mayor Wu?
That is how we keep
Mayor
our city
Wu,
safe.
do you manage
we
your
have
budget or
the
not?
numbers to prove it. I manage my budget. I have a AAA bond rating dating back 10 years.
So to
for
the city of Boston,
budget.
just understand that your mayor does not care how much of your resources she has spent on people who are not citizens
The city
of
of Boston
the city of
is
Boston.
sick of having
I'm
people
reclaiming my
outside
time.
Boston
Mr.
telling
Bear,
us what
Mr.
we
Bear, I have
need.
a question for you because I understand.
That part right there, what she said, everybody needed to hear that, especially if you live in Boston. You needed to hear that because she's not lying. They don't ask. These meetings are free. If you guys ever want to go to like your mayor meetings or your city council meetings, sometimes the mayor may be present at those meetings, you should go. They're free. Just look, all you have to do is look it up online. City of Boston, city of whatever, wherever you live, look it up online. They show you when they have these meetings and stuff like that. She's not lying. But you guys need to know that. Meanwhile, you guys don't have money to pay for schools. You don't have money to fix these schools in Roxbury and Dorchester. You ain't got money to do that. You want to put the students through a lottery system and you want to tell the students, good luck. Hope you win the educational lottery so you can go to a better school in Newton. But she just told you, a lot of people don't know this. David, let's go. David said we should raid these events, Sabby. David, let's go. I went to one and it was a hot mess. I went to one city council. It was tough. It was brutal. They don't know. You see this? She don't ask.
I understand Cato's perspective when it comes to illegal immigration. I understand that the Cato Institute for a long time has had a standard of actually having open immigration into the United States. Generally speaking, I don't want to get into specifics.
We support legal immigration. We want immigration to be legal.
Let me ask you this question, because one of the great libertarians of the modern era, Milton Friedman, famously said, you can either have open borders or a welfare state, but you have to choose. Mr. Beer, what do you choose?
Milton Friedman said he wanted to allow illegal immigration to continue. I disagree with Milton Friedman's position on that. We should have legal immigration and build a wall around the welfare state, not around the country. That's in the best interest of taxpayers.
And I would argue that under the current system where you have sanctuary cities popping up, it is not possible to build that wall. So America has to choose, Mr. Beer, you're done. America has to choose between securing our nation or protecting the taxpayer. I choose secure the nation. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair.
That was brutal. That was brutal. And it's just, again, like they were not prepared. And one of the things I said before is that I don't think that at the time, I can't speak for the other cities. I can only speak for Boston and Cambridge and Somerville. At the time when they decided to create the sanctuary cities, at the time, the numbers wasn't an issue, right? So it was very different back then. But then when Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis, when they started sending buses and planes from their states to Massachusetts, that changed things. And I don't think the mayors, when they made the decision to say, okay, we're going to be sanctuary city, because not just Boston, Somerville was also a sanctuary city. When they made that decision, like I said, at the time, the numbers were not an issue. And they didn't really, at the time, stop and think, okay, are we going to have enough housing for everybody and that type of thing? Because it just wasn't an issue. But then it became a bigger issue. And then they finally said, we don't have the housing. We don't have this. We don't have that. Right? We have to go to this part here too.
Do you agree that someone who demonstrates a willingness to harm society should be detained by immigration officials? Mayor Adams. Yes or no?
Within the confines and restrictions of the law, yes, I do.
Okay. Mayor
Someone
John.
that's committed a crime, yes. Someone that's committed a crime, yes, should be detained, and we would help them.
Every violent criminal should be held accountable, and that's why crime is down in the city of Chicago, because we're doing just that.
Mayor Wu.
If you commit crimes against the people of Boston, you'll be prosecuted.
Another yes or no question. Has anything that's happened in this country in the last 3 years given you reason to consider removing sanctuary city status from your communities? Mayor Adams.
I'm clear that what we do is prevent some of these crimes from taking place.
Mayor Johnson.
We think the system that we have works, and we will keep it.
Violent crime is down in Chicago because of welcoming city ordinance.
Have you considered removing sanctuary city status?
Well, violent crime is down in the city of Chicago under my leadership. We're going to continue to do what we have to do to ensure that continues.
Mayor Wu.
So Brandon Johnson again didn't answer the question. Oh my God.
Are the safest major city in the country, in part because people trust that they can call 911 and help police solve crimes.
Have you considered removing sanctuary city status?
We are going to continue to keep our policies in place that have been working for the people of Boston.
I think you've answered the question. The American people are fed up with the policies that protect criminals, waste taxpayer dollars, and prioritize illegal immigrants over the safety and well-being of.
You guys get the gist there. One thing I will add that Mayor Wu did say, she said Boston's like one of the safest, she's correct about that. I was actually surprised, like when I moved here, oh my God, how many years? In 2011, when I moved here in 2011, I remember reading that and I was like, really? And I remember looking at the crime rate here in Boston and I was actually surprised how low the crime rate is here, considering, it is an urban area. But the reality is when you compare it to other cities that have similar, infrastructure, like if you compare it to like New York City or you compare it to like Chicago and you compare it to, the reality is Boston is a lot safer. And I mean, I don't know. I think it's one of those things that you don't realize until you come here. Because honestly, you can walk around in any neighborhood. Like I've had no problem ever. You can walk around any neighborhood. And for the most part, like a lot of the crime I think that happens in Boston is not stranger crime, right? It's I know you crime. And that was different for me too. Whereas in other cities I've lived in, there's a lot of stranger crime. Like just seriously, there's just a lot of that. But she is correct about that. The funniest part of this testimony here was when AOC comes in to question Eric Adams, for whatever reason, I don't know if she forgot what committee hearing she was sitting in on, but the topic that she's discussing has nothing to do with this hearing. It was just really weird. Like, watch for yourself. Watch this. This is interesting.
On January 31st of 2025, your attorneys met with federal prosecutors regarding the charges of bribery, campaign finance fraud, and conspiracy against you. Were you aware of this meeting prior to its occurrence?
Congresswoman,
microphone, please.
I'm sorry. As I stated to your colleagues, and I'm going to continue to state because we're asking the same question over and over again.
This is a new question.
This case is in front of Judge Ho, and out of deference to
I understand, Mayor Adams.
Process, I'm going to
Mayor Adams,
defer
as your counsel, I'm sure will inform you. The only permissible way to refuse to answer a question during a congressional proceeding such as this is by pleading the Fifth Amendment. Deference to the judge is not a permissible excuse for not answering questions during a congressional hearing. Is it your intention to plead the Fifth today?
Councilwoman, you said the only way that you can't answer a question is to plead the Fifth. I am answering your question. I'm answering your question directly. That
you are not, Mayor Adams.
Okay, I believe I am.
I will ask it again. Were you aware of the meeting between your attorneys and federal prosecutors on January 31st, answering the.
So here's the problem, folks. Eric Adams' investigation has nothing to do with this hearing. You know, it's like, this is a totally different, this hearing is about the sanctuary cities and the mayors of the sanctuary cities. And by the way, Eric Adams was not called to testify. He volunteered to come testify. The others, from what I understand, I know Mayor Wu was called to testify. So just keep that in mind for a second and hold on to that. What is she talking about? So you see, when she ran for that position to be chair of the Oversight Committee, and Nancy Pelosi went behind her back and they said, she told everybody to go with Jerry Connolly, old dude who is sick, from what I understand. And people were like, younger people need to lead. Like, some of you guys need to retire and let the younger people lead. But then you do stuff like this, and it made people kind of look at you kind of weird. Like, what the hell are you talking about? And then if people feel like you don't know what you're talking about, then you're just proving them right that younger people can't lead. To me, this made no sense. I don't know if when she woke up, she thought she was going to a different hearing, but this hearing is not about Eric Adams' investigation. This hearing is about Eric Adams being mayor of New York City during the migrant issue. This has nothing to do with his investigation. But she continues on.
This question is a yes or a no.
And I'm going to answer it again. Out of deference to Judge Holt, with this case.
That is not an answer, Mayor Adams.
He is going to deal with the outcome of the case.
Mayor Adams, is it your intention to not comply with these questions?
As I stated, I'm answering your questions, and what you're doing, let's be clear on, you're asking me about communications between my attorney and I. And I don't think that is appropriate to be asking a question between my attorney and I, because we are in a country of law and order.
I understand.
And your
So, Mayor
relationship
Adams,
and communications with your attorney should be respected.
Who is your attorney?
Alex Spiro.
Alex Spiro, thank you. Now, Mayor Adams, have your attorneys ever met with city officials? That is not covered. You know, I'm not asking about your conversations with your attorneys. Have your attorneys met with city officials, New York City officials?
Any communication or activity between my attorney and
yes or no? Have your personal attorneys met with New York City officials?
Alex Spiro, my attorney, to deal with those communications.
Mayor Adams, in this meeting, did anyone representing you, including perhaps Mr. Spiro, agree or allude to any arrangement with the Trump administration that would involve changing city policies in exchange to reconsideration of the charges brought against you?
Again, this has nothing to do with the hearing that is taking place. When I tell you it's a mad world, this is what I'm talking about.
You say in this meeting, can you be clear?
In the January 31st meeting.
Again, there was never any agreement, never any quid pro quo.
That's not what I'm asking.
Nothing wrong. Never any agreement, never any quid pro quo.
Was there an allusion to a shift
that
in New York City policy?
Gentle lady's time's expired. And I just want to remind her, Mayor Adams is here voluntarily, and we appreciate that. The topic of the hearing is about our illegal alien problem and the drain on the cities and what the solution is. So, Chair, now.
It's a very, very mad world. This is what I'm talking about. It's a mad world, you guys. A mad world. Like, whoa, that was way off script, because that had nothing to do with the testimony. That had nothing to do with that hearing at all. That hearing is not about Eric Adams' investigation. It's not about him and his attorney. That hearing is specifically about what happened with the immigration issue and those mayors from sanctuary cities. Now, again, I say to this, it's laughable. I'm sorry. I say this, at the end of the day, I think at the time when they made the decision and they said we will be sanctuary cities, keep in mind the numbers weren't an issue at that point in time. But things did change, right? So what I do not agree with, number one, I'm heavily against gentrification, heavily against that. And if you have never gone through gentrification, spare me the noise. I don't even want to hear it. I'm very against gentrification. Number two, I do not agree with kicking Black people out of these communities so that other people can come in. Number three, when we talk about resources, before you even say, okay, we're going to bring 1,000 people into this neighborhood, you have to make sure that you have the resources. And by resources, I don't just mean money. I don't just mean housing. I mean, kids have to go to school, right? The teachers have to have the resources to teach more kids. These things aren't free. And if you've never worked in the education system, you don't understand that. You don't know what it's like if you're a teacher and then all of a sudden you go from a classroom of 20 or 15 to 20 to 30 to 40. Your pay doesn't increase. Those types of things. When we say resources, community resources, those things should have been implemented, and it wasn't. So residents were angry. You can't get mad at the residents. People will hear that and people will say, oh, that's anti-immigrant. First of all, I'm not anti-immigrant. I don't like them saying things like calling people aliens. I don't like people being called aliens. What do you mean? I do think that there are ways that you can handle both of these situations, but you cannot kick people out who are barely making it as it is to pay the rent that continues to increase because of the already ongoing gentrification. And now it's just, there's more added on top of that, and there's a lack of resources. And I'll always stand up for people who have to go through that. And if you've never been poor, and if you've never lived in neighborhoods that have been gentrified, you don't know what that's like. You don't know what it's like where everything goes up. So I say that time and time again. The reality is they're there testifying in Congress to answer to, I guess, how money was spent. And Brandon Johnson from Chicago doesn't know how much money was spent. I don't know what's going on with Brandon Johnson, but your approval rating right now is very, very low, and the people are not happy with you. But at the end of the day, what people have to ask is, why is it able to happen in the first place? And the reason why it is able to happen is because the corporate class, the oligarchy, the billionaire class, they allow it to happen. Companies want cheap labor. Companies don't want to pay you. Believe it or not, they don't want to give you benefits. They won't say it, but I'll say it. Companies, you think they love to give you benefits? You think they love to give you paid time off, paid sick leave, and all this kind of stuff? These things cost the company money. They want cheap labor. So at the end of the day, as I've said before, don't point your finger at the migrant community. Point your finger at the billionaire and the corporate class that is allowing it to happen because they want cheap labor. And so as a result, the workers are pitted against each other. And the billionaires, they just sit back and laugh. Meanwhile, they get tax breaks. Always remember, like I told you, follow the money. See who's really pulling the strings. But it's a mad world, folks. It's a mad world. I think with that testimony there, I think what it revealed is that some of the mayors of these cities don't know what they're doing. I think we can all see that with Brandon Johnson. All right, let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you. Thank you for the super sticker, Navo. Thank you. Oh my God. This is crazy. Thank you. Netanyahu is on the Epstein list. Who made this account? Trump doesn't know Israel funds Hamas. Thank you for that. Walter, Lindsay is fakety fake fake. I see somebody remembers that saying from me. Fakety fake fake. Thank you, Wasim. The Arab plan of committing $35 billion rebuild of Gaza that would have built an airport, seaport, more schools, business districts, cultural districts, many Riviera hotels, and using the rubble to extend Gaza similar with the islands of Dubai. Interesting. Oh, this continues. I'm sorry. Thank you for this one as well. Trump turned it down and Hamas would have left because it was a free Gaza. Interesting, Wasim. Thank you, Navo. Happy birthday, Sabby. Enjoy your special day. Thank you. Thank you, Wasim. Hamas was invited to stay in Turkey, I heard. Really? I'm surprised with Turkey. They can be kind of wishy-washy sometimes. Like the leadership can be kind of wishy. Like sometimes they cool with Israel. I don't know. Thank you, Sophia. Love back as always. Amazingly great work. Wow. Happy birthday to you. Thank you. And thank you, David. Break Into Electric Boogaloo had the old movie trope of saving the rec center. Yes, they did. We need that energy today. Fresher than fresh, funkier than funky. See, that was a typical 80s theme, man. Save the rec center, save the community center. Thank you, New York Varsity. The real genius is Governor Abbott. So immigration is our problem, huh? Here are some one-way tickets to Martha's Vineyard. Terry said, I don't like when they kept calling immigrants illegal and aliens. I know. Yeah. Thank you, Wanker. U.S. wrecked other people's countries with wars, death squads, and economic imperial takeover, climate change. The U.S. has moral responsibility to accept migrants. Thank you, Yala. I'm sick of these Ivy League elites in power X woo. Yeah, a lot of them come from those schools. Thank you, Kinman. Is Boston racist? Is the sky blue? Well, there's no non-racist city. Every city I've lived in has had racism, but that includes Boston. Thank you, New York Varsity. Sabby, look at her body language and look at the timing of her looking down. The whole line of questioning was scripted, and maybe Adams is in too. Thank you, Yala. AOC just wants a power trip. And thank you, Marlon. She just wanted to credit the mayor if she could not get him to answer in a way that would help her cause. Interesting. And I think we have one on Rumble. Is there one? Yeah. All right. Thank you, Skip. Happy birthday and TKS for your dedication to love and truth. Thank you. And thank you for this. Boston too cold for criminals, and I'm not interfering color. I'm not inferring color because it's too cold. That's why our crime rate is, that could be part of it. I never thought about that before, but I guess if it's too cold, people don't have time to try to like go and rob people because it's too damn cold. That actually, now you got me thinking about something. Now you make me want to look up and see crime rate by weather. But not Detroit. Detroit's colder than Boston, believe it or not, you guys. And Barron said Chicago's freezing cold. Yeah, I think Chicago and Detroit get colder temperatures than we do because they get negative temps, if I understand, sometimes, and we don't get negative temperatures. Eric said crime goes down in the winter. Yep, there you go. I mean, it is hard for people to get people to come out in the winter here. I'm not going to lie. It is like the wind is the big thing. It's not just because it's cold, but that wind is no joke. Hey, have you ever like walked down the street in the winter, like in Boston, because like the wind whips between the buildings? I don't even know how to describe it, but like the wind comes in between the buildings and wraps around you. And it's like, ah, so it's the wind mixed in with the cold that makes it even worse. I don't know. But yeah, Terry said they make up for it in the summer here in Boston. That is true, because the crime does increase in the summer. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well. That is it for me tonight, guys. Guys, I'm not live Friday night because I am going to be enjoying my birthday weekend. So I will be live again Tuesday night because I'm going to have some birthday plans and I'm really excited about that. So I hope you guys really do enjoy your weekend and I will see you Tuesday night. All right, cool. And we'll get this StreamYard thing figured out before then, but have a good night. Keep up the fight.